What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the start of the week, gang. On the Monday slate to kick things off. Looks like a good one. 9 games on deck. Some pretty good pitching combos. Hopefully everybody had good weekends out there. I did. Went to the Yankee game on Saturday night. Yanks Braves. Saw a solid win by my New York Yankees. Fun weekend to DFS. Nothing crazy. Saw some good results in the Discord, though. Hopefully some people are doing well out there. Let's dive right into this slate. Could be Travis putting a pin right on it. Who does chat like more between Ragans, Peralta, and Crochet? One of those guys has a really, really challenging matchup on board. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. 8-game, my Braves did not like that result. They should play better defense in center field. That Stanton shot, it was like, sounded good. I've moved forward in my seat, but I didn't jump out of my seat. I was like, it's got a chance based on the sound, the angle. Then the outfielder was just like taking his time, just kind of, I don't know where he thought the ball was going, but like the crowd didn't really react to the ball. And I was like, that's going to hit the wall at least. And then you finally saw him like turn around and sprint toward the wall and screw up that play. But I think that was also the play Stanton got hurt on, if I'm not mistaken, right? All I know is he came out of the game a couple minutes later, and we were all wondering why. But anyway, Cujo Blue's here, Stephen B is here, Travis is here, 8 games here, Pride Heart Rainbow Philly back at you, buddy. Andy Melman's here. Clint Wood's trying to decide between the Dodgers or Texas in DraftKings single entry. Well, I'll tell you what, as much as Garrett Crochet doesn't have a good matchup, on the other side of that one, the Dodgers, not exactly looking their usual premium against how good he's been. So maybe Crochet not my favorite spot, but maybe the Dodgers between those also not necessarily my favorite spot. That said, taking the Rangers against Freddie Peralta, not all that much better. Tizzleman, I'm glad you know what a home run looks like. Judge hits a fly ball to mid-center and the Yankee crowd goes crazy. Yeah, it's hilarious watching people jump out of their seats for foul balls. Like a lazy fly ball down the right field line, and people are like, oh my God, it's gone. And it just like hooks foul by 50 feet. It's just like, it's bananas. And yeah, the cans of corn to center field. Especially when it's like, he got a hold of it a little bit, but it's on an angle like this, so it's just going like straight up into the outfield, and he hit it to the deepest part of the ballpark. Like, have you ever been here before? So yeah, I totally know what you're saying on that one. We enjoy those people. It was also just a plague for whatever reason. Saturday night game, it was a packed house, probably part of it, but it was a plague of people who were unable to find their seats. Just in my section, just one after another, and they kept sitting like standing. Not even sitting, because standing is the problem, right? If they come and sit down, who cares? I don't care if you're in your seats or not. I do a little bit, but for the purposes of this conversation, I don't really. But if you're gonna come up and stand there and like just kind of stare around and block everybody's view, it becomes an issue. And it was just person after person and group after group that were unable to just put together. Like, I'm amazed they find the stadium, because it's the same concept. It's just a grid of like section, seat, rows, numbers. It's really, really straightforward. The city's laid out the same way. So, like, if you can find your way from Connecticut, you'd be coming the other way. But if you can find your way from, say, New Jersey, through Manhattan, up into the Bronx, and to Yankee Stadium, you should be able to find your seat in Yankee Stadium. It's not that hard. Anyway, really interesting slate. 8-game says, I know the Pirates aren't the premium offense, but I think they're going to be the premium play tonight. Interesting one. I like another kind of low-end team for some success tonight. We'll talk about them when we get there in a little bit. But let's take a quick look at the board. Start things off. Pretty interesting run board. That one's only highlighted because it wasn't available when I first put the sheet together. Starting from the top, that Pittsburgh team, they do have a solid 4.87 implied total against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. 10-run ball game on the board there, the highest total on the board. We all know what happens in that ballpark when the weather's warm, and looks like that kind of environment today. All through the Midwest, there's heat. The Kansas City game is going to be about 100 degrees per Roth around game time, and that one's obviously drawing a pretty big total there as well. But Cincy definitely not one to be overlooked. On the other side, the Reds 5.24 implied total for their end. That one is a matchup between Carson Spires and Bailey Falter. Falter going for the Pirates, Carson Spires going for the Reds. Neither pitcher looking all that appealing with those run totals and their general talent or lack thereof. Next game up, Chris Bassett going for the Blue Jays against the Red Sox, who have Tanner Houck on the mound. 8.5 run total in that one. Heavily favoring the Red Sox behind the excellent Tanner Houck. He looks like an option for pitching. It's just a fairly low-end Blue Jays team, fairly low strikeout Blue Jays team like we talk about a lot. But you can see the impact he's having on their implied total, 3.77. And then Chris Bassett not really damaging the upside for the Red Sox at all. 4.83, one of the better marks on the board on the Red Sox side in Fenway Park. So maybe we'll take a look at them. But we all know that Bassett, as many times as he can go pop, he can definitely succeed over a fairly long stretch and pitch deep into a game as well. So might be a spot where, Vegas has it, but it's not the best opportunity for DFS. A lot of bats to like at the top of that lineup, though. Braves and the Cards. The Braves are looking fairly good. 4.41 implied total. That honestly could be a little bit higher. Like if we were to there, I wouldn't object. A lot of bats for the Braves going up against Lance Lynn. And then rookie Spencer Schwellenbach, high-end prospect for the Braves, making his 5th start of the season, going up against that low-end Cardinals team. They're middle-of-the-road Cardinals team, I guess is fair. I think they're a game or two over 500 now. But, fairly middle-of-the-road, scuffling Cardinals team. May or may not have Nolan Arenado in the lineup. He's been banged up all sorts of maladies lately and was out of the lineup since last week, then came back for a day, then was out on Sunday. So I forget whether he even came back for that day. But we'll see whether Arenado's in the lineup. Schwellenbach, interesting pickup for the week in season long. I got him his 2 starts, one against St. Louis, and then I think the next one, the end of the week against, I want to say Pittsburgh. Looked like a pretty interesting 2-start pitcher this week. So looks good for DFS. Priced in the mid-range, 4.18 implied total for the Cards, 4.41, and again, could probably be a tick higher for the Braves. Dodgers, 4.23 implied total. Shows a little bit of the mix, right? It is a little bit of their quality shining through, but it's a little bit of Crochet's talent and success so far this year. And especially, he's shown some success at limiting some decent offenses to fairly low totals. So, could be an interesting spot on either side. I would play either option, the Dodgers bats or Crochet. But I'm not rushing to those options either. Crochet is very high priced, deservedly so, but a very challenging matchup, probably the toughest team he's faced so far. 3.87 implied total on the White Sox side. Obviously, they're awful. They're going up against James Paxton, who hasn't exactly been great, but he's been, hit and miss and a little bit better over the last, let's say, 7 or 8 games than he was at the beginning of the season. But by and large, pretty skippable. It is a great spot against that low-end White Sox team. I could also see them ripping off a few runs and kind of succeeding. They'll have Lou Bob and Eloy Jimenez in the lineup, one of the few times that's happened, presumably. I know Eloy Jimenez came out of yesterday's game after taking a few weeks off and saying he was a little bit sore, so we'll see what happens there. But if they're both in the lineup, they get a little bit more interesting. Marlins against the Royals, top pitching spot of the day. Cole Ragans on the mound for Kansas City. He's got Miami checked down to just 3.76 implied runs. He's been spectacular this year. Again, that is a ridiculous hitting environment. The wind is blowing out. It's going to be 100 degrees. Ross report, he's just got three greens that are just reporting good hitting environments on his report today. One Cleveland and Baltimore on the earlier slate, then the Toronto-Boston game with the wind blowing out to right, and then this game, again, 100 degrees, winds out to left at 10 miles an hour. If you look at the stacks board and the power index, I actually went in and corrected. Rodrigo Munoz wasn't showing enough power against, and I went in and I gave his some of his back-end stats an update to catch them up to where he is now, because he's given up a ton of home runs. So it goosed the home run upside for the Royals a little bit. They were already the top stack of the day. Minor differences overall in the projections, but they look pretty terrific. 5.88 implied total on their end going up against Munoz. And then Cole Ragans looks like a terrific option on their side. Love the combo of Ragans with some guys from his offense as a stack. Support the win upside and all of that. So it seems like a good DFS play. He's going to be popular. He's very, very high priced, but he's easy enough to reach today. The Rangers at the Brewers. Freddie Peralta going for the Brewers. Got the Rangers offense pretty much in check at just 3.51 implied runs. And then coming back the other way, it's Michael Lorenzen going up against a pretty good Brewers offense. 4.59 implied total for Milwaukee. Definitely looks like one of the playable spots on the slate. Next game up, the game that I mentioned, I like one of these low-end teams for some offense today. 9-run total, and it's actually on the team with the lower-end run total here, 4.24 implied total for the Athletics. They're going up against Griff Canning, who does project out to an okay number because they're the Athletics, but with all the power that he gives up, at the very least, I like targeting them maybe for some home run upside. I made Brent Rooker the home run pick of the day. I think that J.J. Bleday's got a really good shot. He's like the team-based home run pick from Oakland, so there's two Athletics in the home run picks today. Bleday looked like he was going to get a lot of popularity. Rooker less so. Seems like a pretty targetable spot to me for some cheap some cheap A's hitting. And then coming back the other way, the Angels don't look all that bad either. They're obviously drawing a pretty high total at 4.85, one of the better marks on the board. What's that? Third highest overall on the fourth highest on the slate. I missed the Reds up at 5.24. And they're going up against Luis Medina, a highly, highly gettable pitcher, but also one who can succeed in spots. He's had two decent starts this year, and he's had two bad ones. So we'll take a look at it. Definitely some consideration there for value bats, though. Nationals at the Padres. Matt Waldron going for San Diego. He's been pretty good, pretty solid innings eater. Those rubber-armed knuckleballers tend to swallow up a bunch of innings. He's got the Nationals, pretty lousy Nationals team, checked down to just 3.17. Looks like a pretty solid spot for pitching. 4.43 implied total on the other side. It's the Padres going up against Patrick Corbin, another of our favorite targets. So we've got Corbin on the board. We've got Canning on the board for targeting with some bats here. 4.43, not the highest total on the board overall. Same thing with the Athletics, not the highest total. So you hope that you sneak those through with a little bit under ownership for the upside. And then it's a matter of we need the home runs that we're seeing to come through and what we always get against those pitchers. And then we've got a sequence. We've got to have guys on base when those home runs happen, and that's how you hit those big days. But hopefully with a couple other key-looking spots on the board for offense and with the Royals at the top of the board also being fairly cheap, maybe it draws some attention away from what I think are two good spots down board here. Cubs at the Giants. The Cubbies are also showing a ton of power. It's an opener followed by, I believe, Spencer Howard. It's going to be Eric Miller opening again. Right now I've got Howard in there, and the Cubs not showing a great total, not exactly chewing up the overall combined projections, but maybe an interesting spot. It's cool in San Francisco tonight. With everywhere else in the 90s and 100s, San Francisco, of course, tonight is going to be in the 50s. It was 56 degrees at game time. So typical San Francisco night. But the Cubs able to power through that, and maybe a good spot to pick off some one-offs. There are a lot of cheap bats in that lineup. And if they get Howard, I think there's upside there, even though he's been somewhat effective in spots this year. And then going back the other way, Justin Steele against the Giants kind of looks good to me at the end of the night, with Giants checked down to just 3.73 implied runs. So an interesting board. Could be Travis says, I hate Griffin Canning's chalk will be underweight, be in my portfolio because I'm playing 150, but I like the power I see out of Oakland. Mamba says, I'm going to give $50 to everybody in chat if I take down today. Travis says, a bunch of creepers who don't usually type in chat are going to come out of the woodwork. He meant lurkers. Creepers too. Let's be honest. This is the internet after all. Bunch of people out there hanging out watching already. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you've never hit it before. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. If you see stuff pop up, give it a little like, a little retweet. Helps spread the word, helps build the crowd. Get more creepers in here to freak Travis out. I know Mamba's been killing it. A lot of home run props, a lot of good combo prop bets that Mamba's been stringing together. Profitable baseball season, I would imagine, for Mr. Mamba out there. If you haven't checked out acemind.io, if you're looking for an optimizer, I know there's a DraftKings, I believe, is running like a 1 cent entry, some kind of rack up a bunch of DK points, etc., crowns, whatever they're called over there, kind of a thing this week. So there was some chatter about how do you use optimizers to do mass multi-entry, and I put some details about creating a sorting table into the Discord today. There are old videos over at Stochastic Knee Awesomeo for how to do that. I don't know if they're still up there, but we made a bunch of them a while ago. A bunch of the people that made them no longer with the company anymore. They don't use Fantasy Cruncher anymore. There's a lot of Fantasy Cruncher in them, so who knows whether it's going to happen. But anyway, that started with an Ace Mine promo. We were talking about optimizers. We're also talking sims, and if you're in the market for those, best pricing in the industry, our pals over at acemine.io. They've got some killer product, baseball, basketball, football, all the major sports, working on a lot of other things in the background. And they've got an optimizer, and they've got great sim tools for both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you jump over there, promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month, and your first 3 days are always free on them as a trial period. So check them out, and let's move on. Could Be Trav says you can make 150 lineups for $1.50 on DK. Great way to get your feet wet in MME. Sounds like. So Ragan's top of the board, 11K on FanDuel, totally worth it in my mind. I found it really easy to build to that price today. It's fairly probably straightforward what my lineup is, or if it's not already revealed, it certainly will be as we talk this show through. But it's a couple things I've already hit on with Cole Ragans in the top of the lineup. So love him at the top of the board. 10-1 on DK. Honestly, if they had him at 10-5 or so today, where Tanner Houck is, let's say, wouldn't have had any issues with it. In fact, I think those two prices should be reversed given the matchups. Love the option at the top of the board if you can get there. Freddie Peralta, just a little bit of a challenging matchup. You know, there are some very good hitters in that Texas lineup. I believe they're getting Josh Young back this week as well. I don't think today, but I think I think I saw that he's going to take batting practice either today or tomorrow and then maybe get activated. So they'll improve from that. But either way, Texas, a more threatening opponent than the Marlins are, certainly. Hitting environment or not, definitely a tougher opponent. But Freddie Peralta, terrific option, 9,800, 9,500, nice little discount from where Ragans is. Justin Steele, like I said, love the pitching environment end of the night out in the cold San Francisco night. Good matchup for him against that Giants team. He's good at keeping the ball in the yard by and large anyway, capable of finding some strikeout upside. 8,500 feels like a pretty nice discount for him on the DraftKings slate as well. Really love how that mixes in with those top options. If you told me you went Peralta Steele, I think that's a pretty good combo. If you wanted to take Steele as a cheap SP1, I think you could get away with it from that angle as well and just go like Steele Schwellenbach, Steele Waldron. Hell, if you wanted to get fun with it, and I guess he's chalky on DK at 61, but Griff Canning, again, does project into the middle of the board. I prefer the other side. It's a pitcher I tend to target, and he's been fairly low strikeout this year. So assuming that is chalky, and he's probably getting some ownership at 7,200 on the FanDuel slate as well, I tend to go the other direction with that and say, all right, I'll target a chalky Griff Canning with some of those Oakland bats. Makes me even more enthusiastic about that spot. But if you're considering rostering him at pitcher, you wouldn't be completely crazy to just say, like, all right, Justin Steele and Griff Canning, keep me real cheap now. Not a terrible combo. Garrett Crochet, as mentioned at the top, just a really tough matchup against the low strikeout and excellent Dodgers team. That said, it's a diminished version of the Dodgers lineup, but not greatly so. So he's still really threatened. He's very expensive. He's discounted slightly for the matchup on DraftKings. FanDuel said nuts to that. They went basically full price. So just going to be challenged, but he's risen to the challenge most of the times this year. Tanner Houck has been terrific this season. Just a low strikeout Toronto bunch. Might put an artificial ceiling on him, but he's got the talent to punch through that. Not the highest strikeout guy in the world, but capable. So he's definitely playable. I feel like he's probably going to come up under-owned compared to a lot of the other guys on that slate in terms of just talent, but it's not a great matchup for DFS upside. Success to around that mean projection? Absolutely. That plus a bonus? Absolutely. No issues with that. But there is a little bit of a cap on that. Matt Waldron, just good opportunity for 7 relatively clean innings against that Washington team. He's no ace. He's also another pitcher where the strikeouts might be a little bit thinner, so you might be dealing with a little bit lower of a ceiling, but you're already at a much lower price, so the diminished ceiling by comparison doesn't necessarily matter. Schwellenbach is a premium rookie, decent pile of strikeouts from the minor leagues. A little bit up and down over his first couple of starts, but looks like a pretty good matchup to me. 8,000, 7,400. I love the option if you need a solid mid-range pitcher there. Seems like a pretty good spot for Schwelly. Chris Bassett just a little bit threatened by the Red Sox, that total, that ballpark, but obviously has the talent to pitch through. 9,000 on FanDuel, 8,700 on DraftKings. I think he's in the mix for shares. He's not a priority. But if you're mixing in some shares across 150 lineups, especially if you're entering those, those cheapo DraftKings contests, you definitely want to carve out a little space for Chris Bassett to succeed. The right night, he goes out there, pitches 7 innings, doesn't give up a run, few hits, strikes out 5 or 6 or 7. That's a good game. You need, obviously, the Blue Jays to come through and beat Tanner Houck on the other side, which has been a difficult proposition this year. But Bassett's in no way off the board. Canning, just to hit it one more time, 72.61 is a very good price, but he's been pretty bad this year. The strikeouts have really not been there. It's a great opportunity for him to have a good game, but if the world is going there just because he's cheap, I can find different ways into this slate. Lance Lynn against Atlanta, I don't really love, but he is cheap. He does have a lot of track record, a lot of history. It's basically similar with James Paxton, except he's in a much, much better matchup against the White Sox. You're paying $1,000 more for him on FanDuel, but for $200 less on the DraftKings slate, give me Paxton over Lynn, I think, more often than not. Spencer Howard working behind an opener. You can see there's a very clear cut line on this slate between the haves and have-nots. Right? We don't often get it with that distinct and no real need to talk. I mean, we're going to talk through these guys. But usually there's a clear cut line up in this direction. And today more is kind of a blend, gradual blend down through these guys, and then a dramatic cutoff there. Howard just going to be limited probably, 4 innings of bulk relief work, and very limited opportunity to book the win. Doesn't look all that appealing. And again, Chicago's showing some decent power upside against him. Medina's the interesting one, 5,500 on DraftKings. We're going to look at it. He hasn't really worked out, but he has had some decent starts, as I said. So given that price difference, with not really all that much difference between these two opponents, if he's super popular there, I don't really have an issue considering that option for a significant discount, and I certainly like it better than that. Lorenzen, just not a great option against a pretty good Brewers team. Carson Spears, not a great option against Pittsburgh with them showing all that upside. Same thing, Bailey Falter against Cincinnati. That ballpark, the highest run total on the slate. I just feel like you don't tangle with that game, with those options in terms of pitching. Between the two, I don't even know. I guess I give the slight nod to Spears just based on the matchup. But Falter's the one with a little bit more of a track record. Pat Corbin against San Diego, no thank you. And Roderi Munoz at the bottom of the board doesn't look like a great option against KC. No Canning for Lone Wolf. Could be Travis considering giving them the X button. Yeah, I'm telling you, if he's that highly owned, I mean, not to jump ahead, but this is a pitcher we've been targeting and succeeding. You can see Rooker, home run pick of the day. JJ at 9.34. He's got 11. He's lefty, so I made him the Athletics team pick. You've got Andujar right there at a pretty solid number. You've got Soderstrom showing a good number. You've got Shea Langoliers above the magic number. A couple of 6s all the way down the lineup with Nevin and a very cheap Zach Geloff with some upside there. So we'll see what the lineup looks like. They do have a bit of a mix and match lineup available. But to me, this is a spot where if he's going to draw a lot of ownership, a cheap A's angle is kind of appealing. I mean, it's already, not to give it away, again, it's you guys are going to be able to guess exactly what's in my lineup as we talk this through. But the A's are in there right now as a 3-man. And if they're going to be low owned for it, so much the better. I just want to see where we're at here. So it's not a crazy number, but it's RG's projection, so you can take it with a grain of salt. He is in the single digits on FanDuel over there. I imagine that number explodes on DraftKings, though. Or there's just some differences site to site in expectations. It's in the double digits, but it's not crazy. DraftKings for Canning on other places, above or below 20%. We don't need to talk about it as like targeting crazy chalk if he's not going to be. I just like the athletic side of it, and I would avoid Canning even as a cheap option. I just don't. You can see 15.4% strikeouts, limited swinging, very bad CSW, pretty poor results in terms of the ERA, and the XFIP is not at all far behind. Just slightly under 4. 4 is always the number we're looking for to make you bad, but if we go back over time, 4.10 there, didn't pitch the year before that, has been vulnerable to power for quite some time. 8.4% barrels, 43.3% hard hits, and 91 miles an hour of exit velo with some of these home run hitters, especially this little core right here. I'm much more interested in the athletic side of that. So somebody let me know, though, if are they super popular? Is Canning rather super popular? And yeah, 8 games, nailed it right there. I just mentioned it as I was running through that breakdown. A cheaper, on the other side, a cheaper Medina of that same game. You're talking about a 14% strikeout rate, but this guy's at 15.4, 10.8% walks, but this guy's at 8.3. Slightly better ERA, slightly worse XFIP, has given up fewer home runs, despite giving up fairly similar contact. Nobody's saying that Luis Medina is suddenly a great pitcher. He did have an okay 109 2/3 last year. The runs were bad. The whip was bad. The walks were too high, but the strikeouts were okay. The swinging strikes were pretty good. He was also pretty okay at limiting power, although, again, that tells me there's more home runs lurking there for him. 2 good ones, 2 bad ones so far this year. So, yeah, if I'm rolling the dice on one of these two, I'll take the $600 discount for Luis Medina. I see really no difference between the two. There's a little bit better of a strikeout bump on this side with the Athletics at 26.7% for that lineup versus 21.4% for this version of the Angels lineup. But these guys have not been good. They've not been threatening. Anyway, let's jump back. We'll come back to that game in a little bit. Travis is taking Medina and Spires over Canning today. Cooch dropped it in. All right. So just below, that is notably higher though than the RG projection. So I would expect if they've got it at that number, the people I think you're getting that from, I would suspect that it's probably going to be in that range, 15-20% at least. And I would say, as people talk it through, it's gonna draw the eye. If people think it's going to be like that, like there are places that'll be talking about using him. So to me, that's a even more reason to just. You don't have to block him out of 150 lineups, but I would be looking to undercut the field at the very least on Canning, and I would definitely be drawing some of these bats against. Speaking of bats, terrific spot off the top of the board here for bats. Carson Spires did just get a name drop in the chat. 25 1/3 innings. Only one of them was a start so far. Has been okay. 3.20 ERA, a 4.10 xFIP, 18.9% strikeouts without a bad walk rate at all. 4.7% walks. Limited in terms of the strike throwing, the inducing swinging strikes, but hasn't been bad in that department. 25 1/3 includes some relief work. They were all basically bulk relief appearances, all at least 3 innings. Gave up 4 earned runs in his most recent performance. That was against this same Pirates team just last week. Made the full start, went 6 innings, gave up 4 earned on 7 hits, struck out 5, walked 1. If we can avoid some earned run damage there, we're okay. Against the Cubs in a bulk relief appearance, he ended up going 5 2/3. Had an excellent game. 4 hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. If we got that guy today, forget it. For these prices, it looks great. The problem is the hitting environment doesn't really speak to that being the case today. You're just drawing against a really good opportunity for some hitting in this ballpark in the heat. Even though it's showing a little bit for Pittsburgh. They're not blasting through the top of the roof, but this is a high projection. They rank out fairly high overall on the stacks board. Just looks overall like a spot where we're drawing a little bit more offense with a lot of better pitching options on the board. But at 6,400, I definitely wouldn't begrudge at least a few shares in terms of those cheapo dart throws. It's just, as I was saying before, you're talking about the biggest game for hitting on the entire slate and 2 guys who rank out at the bottom of the board with some options available above at similar-ish kind of prices. Bailey Falter going against this Reds lineup. Really don't love the opportunity for Falter. I used him once, I think, this year. He's had an okay run, 3.74 ERA in terms of allowing runs. He's been fine. It's just you don't get a lot of strikeout upside with him. 16.5% strikeout rate. This is a Reds team that has some strikeouts in it, 22.2% for this projected version of the lineup. Let me see if we got the confirmed. We do not. Does look like we got a few lineups in, though. Not this one, though. Wilson Contreras is back tonight. So even with a little bit of strikeout equity from the strikeout rate in the opposing lineup, there's also just a lot of power showing here. They've got the second highest implied total on the slate at 5.24. Feels like a why do you want to tangle with it with Bailey Falter kind of a spot. 6,800 is a little bit more expensive than the other guys in the extreme end of the bargain bin. Both of these guys, 7,900, 7,800. I really don't think you touch on FanDuel. Seems awfully, awfully thin. Even as like nobody's gonna do it. They're low owned. We see that all the time. A 1% pitcher went off for 35 points. Yeah, can happen. But your probabilities are pretty thin with these two starters. You want to be looking for a little bit more strikeout upside from those guys. So DK Spires, maybe. Falter's kind of a no. FanDuel for me, both pitchers kind of knows. If we're looking at bats, there's definitely appeal there. The top three are kind of obvious for Pittsburgh: Andrew McCutchen, Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz. Everybody's pretty cheap on DraftKings. 4,800 for Cruz is the highest price on the entire slate. Plus you get Rowdy Tellez for just 2,600. Rowdy has not been good this year. Just 2 home runs in 192 plate appearances, a .080 ISO, a very limited premium contact profile compared to who he's been in years past. So you're really rolling the dice with Rowdy. He's cheap for a reason. It's not even one of those spots where I can find some encouraging things to say like, oh yeah, but if you look over here, he's exactly like the guy you normally. He really hasn't been. So you are rolling the dice there, but you are taking it with a guy who's hit a lot of home runs, had a lot of power over the years against a relatively weak righty. Yeah, Spires hasn't allowed a home run yet, but I don't know if we're completely buying into that given just the makeup of the pitcher. So I do think there's a little upside, but it's limited here. And your more appealing guys are there. McCutch has 10 home runs. Brian Reynolds has 12. O'Neill Cruz has 10. Each of them can steal a base, but they're not the fleetest of foot. 294, sub 300 on base for O'Neill Cruz. Really needs to improve. 32.6% strikeout rate is part of the culprit. You can be there, but you got to draw double-digit walks. Balance this out a little bit. That's his big spot to kind of look to improve. But he's very affordable. He obviously absolutely destroys the ball when he makes contact. That's what we love about O'Neill Cruz. So tons of upside, 182 ISO on the season, just under the Mendoza line for run creation, and that would be solved by improving the on-base. Reynolds and McCutchen both been good. 12% above average for McCutchen, 27% above average for Brian Reynolds. He's on a little bit of a roll. I feel like I've seen multiple home runs from him over the last week or so. He's up to 12 on the season. Good triple slash, 10.5% barrels, 47.7% hard hits. Looking a lot like the Brian Reynolds of years past. Nick Gonzalez, relatively effective slash line, 279, 311, 450, a 171 ISO, creating runs 9% better than average. Not a bad option at 4,000 on at second base on DK. 3 positions for 2,900 in a good game environment. There's some appeal there on FanDuel. Ke'Bryan Hayes, 42.8% hard hits. That's taken a dip by about 6 percentage points, and they're 6 pretty important percentage points for him. He's also down in barrels this season, back to the level that he was at like 2 years ago. And the output has really suffered. 230, 297, 309, a 73 WRC+, a .078 ISO. A player who puts the ball in play a ton and over time has had a really good contact profile. He was one of the guys I was expecting a nice little upswing from this year, and plays a hell of a third base, but hasn't really come through fantasy-wise or in real baseball sense at the plate for us this season. I do still want to go there, so it is kind of an appealing spot for Ke'Bryan Hayes. I feel like he'll be under-owned compared to the guys at the top of the lineup. So maybe a lower priority than some of the other hitters, but a guy to keep in mind as you're clicking together Pirate stacks. If you need a fairly affordable one-off at third base, you could do worse. Certainly, Jeimer Candelario on the other side of this game for a little bit more money is going to be the more popular between the two. So if you consider it along terms like that, you're saving, getting a guy in the same game environment with not the same skill set, but the ability to hit the ball hard. It's not a terrible pivot for value. Edward Olivares, Jack Suwinski, Yasmani Grandal at the bottom of the lineup. Suwinski's been a real letdown this season. 6 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and 206 plate appearances. Just a 132 ISO. This is after mashing his way through last year. Suwinski last year, 26 homers and 534 plate appearances, a 230 ISO, created runs 12% better than average. Was a tremendous lefty bat last year, 15.7% barrels. That's cut in half this year almost exactly. 37.4% hard hits, way, way down. Strikeouts are down a little bit. He's walking a little bit less, but he's striking out a little bit less. Kind of a lost year so far from Jack Suwinski. Yasmani Grandal still only has the 2 home runs that he hit the day I said you can skip Yasmani Grandal, which is just going to stick in my head for the rest of my life. Edward Olivares, a little bit of power upside there. He's got 5 home runs on the season, a 129 ISO, and a little bit of a track record for being able to put bat on ball in like a effectively average kind of a range. He's just another outfielder on both sides, but he's playable in Pirate stacks. Another guy who will be fairly under-owned or fairly low-owned. On the red side, second highest total on the board, definitely going to be the more popular of these two teams. For good reason. There's a lot of talent in this lineup. Let's see, we got it. Sometimes if I talk long enough about the first team, the second one pops up, but no such luck today. Stu Fairchild bumping up to the top spot in this projected version of the lineup. 4 home runs, 7 stolen bases, and 82 WRC plus, just a 306 on base. We could maybe consider somebody else in that leadoff spot if we're Cincinnati. Spencer Steer works up there, even though they want his bat kind of in the middle of the lineup with this construction. You could honestly go leadoff Ellie. 338 on base for the full season, over 327 plate appearances. Going to be hitting righty against the lefty. I want to talk real quick about his splits, because it does have that. Now we're at the point where it's like a reputation kind of a thing. And if we're looking at the numbers, three of his home runs this year versus lefties as a righty. 229, 351, 365. 135 ISO versus a 239 ISO against righties as a lefty. In that side of the split, he's hitting 250, 332, 489. So the key thing to note there, and he's got a 125 WRC plus as a lefty versus a righty, but he's got a 106 WRC plus as a righty versus a lefty. Strikes out at a 28.4% clip as a righty versus a lefty. Walks 12.1% of the time. So he doesn't necessarily have the elite killer power upside on this side, but he actually gets on base more effectively so far this year at 351. Again, 351 versus 332. Comes together for a very effective overall on base percentage. He's got 37 stolen bases, 13 home runs, and again, 10 of them on the other side of the plate, but 3 of them have come on this side. If you include last year, we look at the full career. It's not a gigantically higher sample. Those things do change based on last year. So if you're including that in the numbers, it does dip to against as a righty against lefties, 205, 289, 310. Dramatic difference there. A 66 WRC plus, a 114 WRC plus on the other side, 253, 329, 478. Either way, the power is mostly on the other side of the split. He hit 2 home runs as a righty last year. But I do think that it's fair to look at this year because we're looking at a growing player. Ellie's 22 and a half. He came up with flaws. We knew about that. So the fact that he's made some strides in it's still under 100 plate appearances, 90 something though. We're seeing some real strides. I still think he's probably better served just being a lefty hitter. But he hasn't been completely lost, and he's been involved, and he's been creating runs, and he's been getting on base. So if you're playing, you're playing him either way, 6,300, 4,100. Like I'm not exactly selling something crazy here. But I think maybe he gets talked around a little bit because of the lefty-righty thing. and I don't know that it's necessarily worth it. Jamer Candelario, 4,300, 3,600, 14 home runs, a 242 ISO on the season. Really pulled his year together after a bit of a bumpy start over the first, I want to say month of the season or so. Power seemed like it was down a little bit, and has really come roaring back to life. He's a guy who does it without a crazy contact profile. So first and third base eligible for a fair price, downright cheap, honestly, on DraftKings at 4,300 for a team in this hitting environment that's going to be this popular. That's a really, really cheap spot. 3,600 on FanDuel makes a lot more sense. That's correct. DraftKings, yet again, too cheap. Spencer Steer for 45, very cheap over there. He's got second base eligibility in his 3 positions on FanDuel. I love that for 3,200. 9 home runs, 12 stolen bases, a 165 ISO, 103 WRC plus. Tyler Stevenson, a catcher who can absolutely mash the ball. 6 home runs on the season and 218 plate appearances, just a 155 ISO. But look at all that quality contact he's made so far this year. And he was hitting the ball really hard last year as well. So I don't mind the upside for Tyler Stevenson for 4,000 if you're on DK. Not a mistake to include him in a top half stack. Not a mistake to one-off him at catcher. 27 on FanDuel. He's playable over there, but you've got a lot of options at the corners. Jonathan India, 34, 3,000. On DraftKings, he's more of a priority, or he's more playable because you don't have the option to just bolt Spencer Steer into the second base spot. India is okay. 250, 356, 354. The on base is good. Honestly, he would be a really interesting consideration also for the leadoff spot today instead of Stu Fairchild. That wouldn't be a bad angle for them to take with this lineup. 103 WRC plus. India's okay. You catch him on the right day, you can get some counting stats, but 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He's no priority. Santiago Espinal, TJ Friedl, Luke Maley at the bottom of the lineup. Espinal, kind of an afterthought, particularly on DK where he's 2,400 but only at third base. 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a 55 WRC plus, a 101 ISO. Not an ideal option at the third base spot. With middle infield eligibility, is a little bit more playable on FanDuel, but he's not a high priority. Friedl is very good. Will struggle a little lefty-lefty here. 4,400, 3,100, 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases. The triple slash has been pretty bad. The WRC plus is below average. But if you're clicking together parts from this lineup, he will be under-owned if he's all the way down here and lefty-lefty to start the game. And if the idea is, hey, they're going to put a bunch of runs on Bailey Falter, chase him by the third inning, well, Friedl will inherit more value. He will inherit more value, and he will become inherently more valuable. I don't know which of those I was starting out trying to say. So it's got upside as an under-owned part from the bottom, even with some struggles this year. He's a good player. Maley's kind of an afterthought as the second catcher in the lineup, but he does have a little pop. 2 home runs, 2 steals, and 100 plate appearances so far this year. Reds bats, but Pirates bats not all that far behind. If you're playing a pitcher, it's probably Carson Spears on DraftKings for 64. Don't like either guy on FanDuel. Don't really like Bailey Falter on the DraftKings slate. It's another good point there, Trav. Don't love a guy with pinch hit risk in the leadoff spot in stacks. Yeah, it's a good call. Mamba hasn't been able to figure out pitching today. There's a lot of different directions to go. Like I said, I just kind of stumbled into, while I was walking Joker, I was just clicking together a placeholder with, the obvious team, one of the teams I talked about, a one-off, and then just slotted Cole Raggins right in there from the top of the board. It was really, really came together easily. Bassett and Houck, 2 good pitchers in this one. Come on, Toronto. Really? We don't have that lineup yet? No lineup yet. So Bassett for 8,700, 9,000. Just going to be threatened a little bit by the Red Sox, the Fenway Park of it. Sox coming in at 4.83 implied runs. Obviously, there's some upside on that side of the game. We've got their confirmed lineup, whole lot of lefties in it. Tyler O'Neill, a lurking righty with a lot of thunder in his bat in the heart of the lineup. Not the best matchup in the world for Chris Bassett. Could definitely consider some Red Sox. But again, he's good enough to beat this team, even in Fenway Park, even when they're showing offense and not looking like it, and making him not look like an ideal spot. And if that renders him a little bit under-owned for 87 and 9,000 as a fair option in the middle of the board, at the very worst, you're not taking Chris Bassett out of your pool, and you want to probably allocate a few shares in his direction because I feel like he's going to be really low owned. 22.1% strikeout rate, 9.3% walks is a little bit high. That's a little high. That's a little low. But 84 innings in 15 starts, including some of the bad ones, a 3.52 ERA, a 4.03 xFIP. 1.41 whip is definitely high, partly driven by the walk rate, partly driven by some BABIP against. What is the BABIP against? Yeah, 326 BABIP against so far this year. Each of the last 6 years. Each of the last 6 years, it was 282 or lower. So he's gotten unlucky in some of these spots. Had a good game the last time out against this same Boston team. It was back on the 18th, his last start. 6 innings, 7 hits, which isn't ideal, but only 2 earned runs on the 7 hits. Struck out 6, walked 2. Clean game over 5 against Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, 5 hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts, but 4 walks. An inefficient game, but a good one. 8 innings against Oakland, gave up just 1 earned on 4 hits, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks. Has not given up more than 3 earned runs since May 1st. He's given up 3 exactly 3 times. He's given up 2 a couple times in there. But outside of the 7-run game that he had against the Dodgers on April 26th, the start before that May 1st and on run, he's had that one, and then he had 2 starts to begin the year where he gave up 4 runs to the Rays before we knew they weren't good, and the Astros before we knew they weren't all that good. It's a pretty good run of starts overall in the season, honestly, for Chris Bassitt. He has not been bad. He eats innings. He's more than capable of giving you 7. He's fairly priced. I think he's playable. I really do. Again, even with a very good-looking hitting environment, with the Red Sox pulling most of the weight here. If this was a little bit closer, this would be a little bit closer, right? The way the math works. Not going to get excited about it, not going to prioritize it by any means, but Bassitt's definitely on the board. Houck, the only issue is the 19.4% strikeout rate that this group is showing so far this year. Same group of hitters, the guys who were in the show last year, 21.2%. So they're not crazy low, but you've got a really strong run of hitters at the top of the lineup, and all their key bats, or at least most of their key bats, are low and are aggressively low. So it's not the best matchup in the world for Houck. As I was describing before, it's more a situation where I think he succeeds to around these mean projections and then maybe books the win bonus, maybe doesn't. It's a lot to ask for 10-5, 10-6 for him to really find a huge ceiling against this team, especially a huge ceiling that compares to like a Raggins against Miami. So it just kind of falls by the wayside, but I do think the ownership will be limited. So if he gets appealing based on that, that's fine. He's an angle into the slate at worst. It's just a really expensive one. 24.2% strikeouts, a 2.14 ERA, a 2.93 xFIP, sub-1 whip, very good strike thrower, very good at limiting premium contact power, keeping the ball down. Really limits the appeal of anything to do with the Blue Jays. Really not a good-looking spot at all for the Blue Jays offense today. Sub-4 implied total. Not showing anybody above a 5. Nobody even halfway to the magic number for home runs. That's Vladdy at 4.42. Pretty limiting most of the time you roll this. You roll this 100 times, Tanner Houck is going to keep them in check DFS-wise. Not go out. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and have a dominant start 80 of 100 times, but he's going to go out there and keep them in check 80 out of 100 times. And then the 4-5 run game takes up another big chunk of that. The times that they blow him out of the water are pretty few and far between, even in Fenway. So with that in mind, if you're looking at the Blue Jays, I don't love IKF in the leadoff spot. I get that he gets on base a little bit, 323 on base. There's no real appeal there. I get that he puts the ball in play. Still got that cough, excuse me. Puts the ball in play a lot. 13.4% strikeouts, 5.1% walks. Doesn't hit it with any kind of authority, but he is an okay option for them for real baseball in the leadoff spot. Not ideal, but for DFS, pretty limited, pretty weak option there. Spencer Harwitz, 3,600 on DraftKings, 2,400 on FanDuel. A lot of multi-position on the FanDuel slate with this team. Most of these guys have multi-position eligibility, and a bunch of them, 4 of them do on DraftKings as well. A lot of ability to click these guys around the board. Just wish it was a better matchup for him. Harwitz is cheap. He's got a 13.9% barrel rate, 2 home runs in 50 plate appearances, 366, 480, 561. He's been very, very good. Comes with a good hit tool and knows for getting on base. But again, really challenging matchup for them to generate any real big run scoring events, even if a few guys do get on base. Vladdy for 47, 3,000 is notably cheap. It's just not a great spot. Again, not even halfway to the magic number for home run upside. Did hit his 9th of the season the other day, up to a 131 ISO. We're showing a little bit more results for the ridiculous contact that he makes. 12.4% barrels, 58.5% hard hits this season. Don't let anybody tell you Vladdy can't hit the ball hard. It's just, what's the trajectory? What's my home run upside going to be? Justin Turner, 242, 340, 372. Still getting on base. Been a little bit more effective. Back up to a 109 WRC plus after that tragic dip that he took over 2.5 months. Very cheap now, 3,400, 2,600. He's playable. Still not the strongest option in a bad spot team-wise and stack-wise. George Springer really hasn't turned things on. 191, 282, 285, a 68 WRC plus. Mix and match option at best at this point. Addison Barger, cheap in the infield with outfield eligibility on both sites. A mix and match play. 1 stolen base so far. Pretty limited line in his 39 plate appearances. Lefty bat. Get him in the mix against the righty if you're stacking this team, but really unappealing against Tanner Houck. Danny Jansen's got power upside from the catcher spot. 5 home runs in 175 plate appearances, but again, just 4.18 in the home run model. Houck's got a 0.51% home run rate this year. He's given up 2 home runs in 15 starts. Pretty difficult to hit this guy for power. Davis Schneider at the bottom of the lineup, followed by Kevin Kiermaier. Schneider's playable. He's got 10 home runs on the season, in 255 plate appearances. He's got a 206 ISO, one of the more productive power bats from this team. But again, pretty limiting factors here. And then Kiermaier's mostly here for defense. If you're going to this game for bats, the quality is really with the Red Sox. Oh, thanks, Tiz. So, an even bigger downgrade to that lineup because it's Alejandro Kirk instead of Danny Jansen. Cards have an interesting lineup. That's one I've been actually waiting for. What do we got? No Arenado? I knew it. No Goldie either. Oof. That is not a good version of the Cardinals lineup. All the better for Schwellenbach. Blue Jays, IKF, Horwitz, Guerrero, Turner, Springer, Barger, Schneider, Kirk, and Kiermaier. So again, a lot of lefties to draw here against Chris Bassett. Red Sox showing a ton of quality, big run projection. Don't play TJ Friedl, by the way. He just got put on the IL. Jarren Duran from the top of the lineup has absolutely been tearing up the last month or so. 288, 352, 483 on the season, a 130 WRC plus, 7 home runs, 20 stolen bases. Terrific leadoff option for 54.38. He's priced up. He's definitely expensive, but you get discounts on the next 2 guys in both lineups. You get a discount on Rafi Devers. You get a big discount on Tyler O'Neill. So it's not prohibitively expensive, but making Jarren Duran the most expensive player on a team that has Rafi Devers on it is just stupid. I know he's good. I don't dispute that. But this guy is MVP good in the right year. He should never be 100 cheaper. But anyway, killer options on the left side. 4 lefties to start the lineup. David Hamilton has 21 stolen bases. He's slashing 283, 335, 434. 151 ISO, creating runs 13% better than average. Just a really good mixer, a table setter to have in that 2 spot. Not a bad option. And a second lefty up there at the top who can get on base, who can hit the ball with a little bit of authority, and then who has those tools to steal bases. Shortstop, perfectly fine playing him there on the DraftKings slate. Prefer him a little bit at second base, though, if I can get him there at 2,900 on FanDuel. Willie Abreu, 270, 340, 483 at 213 ISO, 6 home runs and 7 stolen bases in 194 plate appearances. Back in the lineup, I believe he was on the IL for a little stretch there. 11.9% barrels, 47.6% hard hits, was mashing before he went away. So definitely another interesting lefty bat to have there. Rafi Devers, 57 on DK. They're coming up in the world, and 37 on FanDuel. Again, cheaper than Duran, but the prices have normalized back to Rafi Devers standards. 13% barrels, 49.5% hard hits. He's got 14 home runs, a 254 ISO, 140 WRC plus. Slightly outpaced so far by Mr. O'Neill. 15 home runs for him, a 142 WRC plus, 277 ISO. Having a great season. Still only cost $5,000 on the DraftKings slate, $3,200 in the outfield on FanDuel. Very, very appealing option here against Chris Bassitt. Both these guys just in the eights, though. We're not over the magic number for either of them for home run upside, for power. So Bassitt does have the ability to limit home runs on the right day. He can get nailed for them on the wrong day. Just one game this year with multiple home runs, though. Just a few games along the way with one. Hasn't given up a home run since May 17th, if we want to put a jinx on it. These are my two favorite bats in this lineup, but I like all these guys up at the top as a 5-man if you can get there. It's not all that unaffordable. It's actually very cheap. $4,900 a piece for the top 5 from the Red Sox today. That's downright cheap. On FanDuel, if you want to take the top 4, you're looking at $33.25. That's a lot more expensive. If you wanted to go with O'Neill into that, which I would, you'd probably go like 1, 2, 3, 4 like that and leave the other outfielder. Probably wouldn't want to book the third outfielder there. And then you're looking at $3,400 a piece. So they're definitely a lot easier to afford. Very, very appealing on the DK slate. Masataka Yoshida could absolutely have been included in that. And then, like, let's say I want to fade the popularity that I expect will be around Jarren Duran while still taking a premium lefty outfield bat from the Red Sox. What do? Well, you go like that. And now that average is $44.60. Pretty cheap. Yoshida just at 228, 302, 316 over 126 plate appearances. Only 2 home runs this year, making pretty limited contact so far this year. So why is he appealing? Well, last year he went 289, 338, 445 with 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases in his first year in the show. That was over 580 plate appearances, created runs 9% better than average. That's an appealing left-handed bat in this lineup against this pitcher for very cheap prices if you're stacking this team. I do not feel the same way about Dominic Smith. 3 home runs is about right from him, a 116 ISO, a 90 WRC plus, over 148 plate appearances of mediocre contact. He's fairly low strikeout. I'll give him that much. He can draw a walk. I'll give him that as well. And he's very cheap, but that is not the way that I want to occupy first base today, even if I'm stacking this team. It's just not if you're stacking this team a bunch of times. If you're building one lineup with one Red Sox stack, I'm probably not going to Dom Smith. If you're building 10 Red Sox lineups, you should be in 2 or 3 of them. Reese McGuire, 31-23, the less appealing of the catchers available on this team. Ceddanne Rafaela, 3,300, 2,900, 2 positions on DK, 4 positions on FanDuel. Coming on a little bit, 8 home runs, 10 stolen bases, just an 80 WRC plus, a 150 ISO, 244, 271, 395. The on base really needs to improve for him. It's very cheap, multi-position, bolt-on part as a wraparound maybe, but the quality for sure through those top 6 is premium today. Red Sox bats, Blue Jays bats. No. Red Sox bats, Tanner Houck, Chris Bassitt, Blue Jays bats. Yeah. And the Blue Jays bats, I'm throwing them into the mix, but it's really 3 playable spots out of the 4. I really don't like the Blue Jays stack today. But I'll throw it into that mix, just if we're ranking things. They're on the bottom from this game, and they're not a priority stack. Braves and the Cards, let's work these lineups in. We've got them both. Jerry Kelenic back in the leadoff spot. He's quietly had a really nice month. Interesting bat. We've seen these stretches from Kelenic before, but he's in a really interesting spot in a really good lineup, or what should be a really good lineup. And he's been doing well. So definitely, at worst, not a skip at these prices. $2,900 on FanDuel, $3,400 on the DraftKings slate. You can see how the contact he's making, 9.6% barrels, matching last year, 46.3%, basically matching last year. 7 home runs, a 270, 313, 444 slash line over 211 plate appearances. That's the most important part. We know there's power there. It's just being able to show that kind of consistency. 173 ISO, but a 111 WRC plus. Been good. Ozzy Albies in the second spot at second base, 5,200, 3,600. A little slightly cheap on DK. 6 home runs, 5 steals, a 151 ISO, 106 WRC plus. Underperforming his talent, underperforming his track record, but a lot of upside. 7.97 in the home run model. Doesn't really strike out. Doesn't draw a ton of walks, so you're dealing with a fair amount of balls in play. And if we're looking at last year, pretty decent contact profile for a second baseman. Marcell Ozuna has been one of the best in the game this year. 21 home runs at 282 ISO, creating runs 74% better than average. Still slashing 314, 395, 96. 6,000 on DK, 4,000 on FanDuel, appropriately high priced, but with everybody in the lineup a little bit cheap, especially on DK again. And you do have, I mean, that's a reasonable stretch of prices. That puts that 4-man average at 53.25. But then if you go like that, 49.40. On FanDuel, that stretch of 4 guys is a little bit more expensive. That's an average price of 36 relative to the FanDuel cap. But that's a really good stretch of hitters still. Matt Olson, 10.9% barrels, 48.3% hard hits, 12 home runs, a 204 ISO. All of that is a step backward. It's a diminishment from Olson. But I feel like that's just we're playing through the sluggish part of the season, and there's going to be a point at which Olson's switch gets flipped, and it'll be a month or two of just tearing the cover off the ball. He's already mashing. He's already hitting the ball really hard. It's not that far away, like the power upside. Austin Riley also has been surging a little bit. We're up to 7 home runs, 163 ISO, 106 WRC plus. From a third baseman who's hit more than 30 home runs each of the last 3 years for 5,100, 3,400, still pretty affordable down there. 11.8% barrels, 50% hard hits from Austin Riley this year. So the contact has not been all that far off the mark. Just some of the output, the results, in a backward-looking sense, haven't been there. That's not overly predictive. Who he's been over the last few years is more predictive than how his season started. Let other people skip Austin Riley. He's a dynamite option. Sean Murphy for just 3,300. That's an incredibly appealing catcher one-off, if nothing else. 69 plate appearances. He's hit 3 home runs, a 172 ISO, just a 78 WRC plus. The triple slash hasn't been good at all, but an 11.1% barrel rate. Last year he had a 15.8%, 44.7% hard hits, and 21 home runs in 438 plate appearances. Sean Murphy is one of the top power hitting catchers in baseball. So to get him for 3,300, even if you're not going to Braves, that's a catcher spot to keep in mind. 2,700, he's easily playable on the FanDuel slate. Ramon Laureano, Forrest Wall, Orlando Arcia at the bottom of the lineup. They're all cheap. Laureano's best days probably behind him, but we do have 2 home runs and 3 stolen bases on the board. Everything else has been pretty weak over his 106 plate appearances outside of the contact profile, which is actually kind of engaging, kind of along the lines of what he's done over time. 2,600, just another outfielder if you need him. Like, if you need to stretch the stack with him, he's got more appeal that way than he does just like, hey, I'm Ramon Laureano, I cost 2,600 on his own. 22 on FanDuel, it's the same thing. That said, Forrest Wall is 200 less and going to give you essentially the same thing from the 8 spot, so just take the discount. 2,500 on DraftKings, it's a $100 discount over there, same idea. 222, 222, 222 over 9 plate appearances from Forrest Wall. And then Arcia just has been disappointing this year. 290 plate appearances. 41.9% hard hits is actually up. The barrels have dipped a little bit. They were down, I feel like, a little bit lower than that 5-1 just fairly recently, though. But everything here has been underwhelming. Might get to 15 home runs if he has a good second half, though. He's a playable part at shortstop. He is very cheap at 3,100, 2,500 if we're remembering who he was last year. All that is to say, I really don't want to play all that much Lance Lynn here. 4.08 ERA with a 4.11 xFIP. He hasn't been completely terrible, but I just, against the Braves, just feels like a why would I kind of a spot. I don't feel like he's effectively priced down enough on either site. Gave us 5 1/3 last time out, but gave up 5 runs, 2 home runs. Struck out 5, walked 0, but gave up 10 hits, and that came against the Marlins at Miami. Pretty bad team in a pitcher's park. The 3 starts immediately before that, he failed to complete the 5th inning. Didn't even pitch in the 5th inning in 2 of them. One of those 2, excuse me, one of those 2, he gave up just 3 hits, no earned runs, but 4 runs. Struck out 4, walked 2. He hasn't exactly had an issue with the long ball. You can credit him that, I guess. But you can see Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, no real issues with that. They're both above the magic number. Austin Riley just below it. Sean Murphy and Ozzie Albies a step behind that, but still showing decent power upside at 7.97 and 7.47. Just it feels like a spot unless he goes out and has one of those weird Lance Lynn struck out 12 guys today kind of days. You're probably going to come away from this one regretting having put Lance Lynn in your lineup. That said, there is a 26.3% strikeout rate on the opposing side. He's at 21.7 on the year, but he's got a 10.2% swinging. Not throwing enough called strikes, 23.9% CSW overall. He's mostly off the board for me. I wouldn't take him out of a pool if I got him a handful of times across 150 lineups. Fine, so be it. But it's one of the less appealing options from that middle. Schwellenbach, though, on the other side, going up against a Cards lineup that's got a 24.3% strikeout rate. And again, no Arenado, he's hurt, no Paul Goldschmidt. Both of those guys underperforming overall for the season. But both of them kind of look like they're pulling it together a little bit. We are showing some big power numbers for Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras, and Nolan Gorman. So they get that upside. This Cards lineup would look more appealing if those two veterans were in it. But you get a little bit of an idea of the threat to Schwellenbach from those three players. 42.2% hard hits on the season, but he's only given up an 8.5 degree average launch and 1.6% barrels in his 21 2/3 innings and 4 starts so far this year. 6 innings the last time out. That was against Detroit. Struck out 7, walked 2, just 1 earned run on 3 hits. Relatively comparable opponent. More veteran quality in the Cardinals, but neither team is gangbusters. 6 innings to start before that. If that one didn't convince you, how about a 6-inning start at Baltimore? Gave up just 2 earned on 4 hits. Only struck out 3 and walked 2, but fairly effective start. Booked a quality start. Didn't get the win, but capable against a really good Orioles team. 4 2/3 at Fenway was a little bit rough. 6 earned runs on 7 hits, struck out 4, walked 2, gave up a homer. Also gave up a homer to Washington in a 5-inning start in his first one in the show. Struck out 5, walked 1, 3 earned runs on 5 hits. Was okay there. First start, we'll give him a break. In Double A, got promoted directly from Double A, that's right. Made 2 starts, 13 innings this year, had a 38.6% strikeout rate with 2.3% walks in the teeny tiny sample. In a larger sample at High A, where he started this season, which is wild, 6 starts, 32 innings, had a 26% strikeout rate, 6.9% walks. Fairly believable upside against, the fairly lousy Cardinals here. I like him. 7,400 on DraftKings, 8,000 on FanDuel. I think he's highly, highly playable. What's his ownership looking like? I think this was sorted by ownership. Doesn't look like he's drawing all that much attention, honestly, which makes him even more appealing. It's another one I'm kind of curious about. He's drawn a little bit higher of an ownership projection on this site than Canning is on DK. It's obviously a much higher price than Canning, but I think he's the better of the two pitchers. I'm curious about that on other sites, though, because if they have Canning so much higher, it might be coming out of his end. So definitely an interesting value play and probably a more talented pitcher in a better matchup. If you're looking at the Cardinals' bats, Mason Wynn from the top, 4,280 has been very effective this season. 299, 342, 436. Pretty good leadoff option, 20% better than average for run creation. More of a slap hitter, put the ball in play, use your speed. He's got 8 steals, 4 home runs on the year. Good leadoff option. Leading into Alec Burleson, who again, above the magic number for home run upside based on a 41.2% hard hit rate so far this year. He's got 12 home runs in 252 plate appearances from the left side. Not really striking out. Doesn't really draw walks either, so a lot of well-struck balls in play out of Burleson. 184 ISO kind of flies in the face of the 12 home runs a little bit, though. It feels like it should be a little bit higher. We're not seeing a ton of other extra base hit output out of him, but a 124 WRC plus, pretty killer. Wilson Contreras back in the lineup, over 128 plate appearances. He was at 280, 398, 551 with 6 home runs. Was mashing when he left. 13.9% barrels, 43.1% hard hits, just activated from the IL. 12.25 in the home run model, second only to Nolan Gorman on the team. Gorman at 14.84, one of the higher overall players on the slate. Actually, number 2. He's hit 16 home runs in 276 plate appearances, but he's also slashing 194, 272, 421 over that sample. A lot of home run or bust days from Nolan Gorman. Very, very playable here, though, obviously. Not a bad one-off consideration. Might gain some popularity as a one-off there. This isn't a terrible little mini stack. It's not awful to stretch it like that or stretch it like this. Carlson's cheap and not really overly effective this year. Switch hitter for a very cheap price. I don't know. Maybe gets a little bit ugly down the bottom. Maybe it is more limited to the top 5. Carlson do last year. 5 home runs, 3 steals last year. 8 home runs, 5 steals the year before. Yeah, I don't think he even really stretched that often for Carlson. Certainly not for Carpenter. Brandon Crawford, Michael Ciani at the bottom of the lineup. Each of those guys can have a day where they hit a random home run, but nobody down there has any sort of reliability. They're all very cheap. They're all mix and match options if you choose to build a bunch of Cardinal stacks against Spencer Schwellenbach. But the quality probably is limited to Brendan Donovan and above. Donovan fills 3 spots on FanDuel. Just another outfielder at 3,700 on DraftKings, though. 8 home runs, 262, 328, 416. He has been on 14% better than average for run creation this year. But not paying a ton of the bills DFS-wise. Braves bats. Spencer Schwellenbach. Cards top end kind of rates. Not a priority for me. I greatly prefer the Schwellenbach side of that. So yeah, it's mostly just the 2 squares from the Braves in this one. But if I had to rank the cards out, it would be below both of those options, and it would be cards bats way above Lance Lynn. I really don't like Lance Lynn here. If you told me you had 150 lineups and Lance Lynn was in like 8 of them, I'd be like, all right, that makes sense. It's got a little bit of strikeout upside. But it's about all I would want. I think I would stop you at 10. Strikeout high this season is 7. He did that over 4 2/3 against Miami all the way back on April 4th. By and large, we're getting 5. 2 6 strikeout games. I think the Lance Lynn train has mostly passed us by at this point in life. Dodgers really threatening Mr. Crochet here. Love the pitcher. Think he's got upside even against this team. Think he can succeed even against this team. He is in the lineup this week, and I've been ducking and diving around the Dodgers all season, but he's in the lineup for the dynasty team this week. He's been that good. I want to give him the chance, and each time I've tried to take him out of a lineup, like I think there was a week where he was facing the Braves, and I was like, oh, let me get out of that one. And he dominated. And he's done that multiple times. He hit one bumpy stretch over 3 starts at April 13th, 19th, and 24th. Outside of those 3 starts, he's been utterly dominant this season. 35.2% strikeout rate. Those came, by the way, against the Reds in Chicago, and then at the Phillies and at the Twins before we knew they were good. In the Reds game, he still struck out 10. He just gave up 5 earned runs over 4 2/3. Gave up 3 home runs to the Phillies at Philadelphia. Bumpy one there. Comparable team to the Dodgers, certainly. But I don't think that necessarily is like, ooh, look what that good team did to him. We got to avoid them. Faced the Astros last time out, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 3 earned runs on 9 hits, but a very effective day overall. Booked the quality start. Didn't get the win. Yeah, it's always going to be a problem with the White Sox. Start before that against Seattle, 1 earned run on 2 hits, struck out 13 over 7 innings. Struck out 10 against Boston over a 6-inning start. If you want a good team in there, 1 earned run, 2 runs on 3 hits. 1 earned run on 5 hits against Milwaukee. At Milwaukee, struck out 8, walked 1. Struck out 11 Orioles in Chicago. Gave up a home run, 2 earned on 3 hits over 6 innings. Quality start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quality starts in a row. The other one, the one before that, was only interrupted by a 5-inning start. He didn't give up any runs, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. Just came out a little bit early in that one. Has been pitching deep into games, though. 6 innings or bust for the most part here. 97 on DK. You're getting a bit of a discount there. I wouldn't have quibbled with it if they had him like exactly 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. You're dealing with a version of the Dodgers lineup. This is the projected version, but probably about this. Definitely diminished from their, excellent on paper form. 20.9% strikeout rate is a little bit up compared to like when they've got Mookie in there and so on and so forth. But still, obviously, 4 star/superstar, tremendous threat type hitters up at the top. A very effective Andy Pages right there. More limited down the bottom of the lineup for the Dodgers. Can certainly pick up some strikeout upside through some of those hitters. Have some easier innings, some less stressful innings. But it will be a day of high-stress pitches for Garrett Crochet. Something to consider in terms of what his ability to book that quality start, get that 6th inning for you on FanDuel looks like. 10-2, you're definitely paying a pretty high price to tangle with the Dodgers. I do think it renders him under-owned, so it's worth playing from that scenario on its own. And again, has beaten similarly good teams. So I like the Crochet side. I would draw Dodgers bats against if you build a big foundation of Crochet lineups. Then I think it makes some sense to at least build a little position of hedge Dodgers stacks. For one thing, outside of Shohei Ohtani, everybody's at least affordable. These aren't good FanDuel prices, but they're not as high as they potentially could be for Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, and Teoscar Hernandez. On DraftKings, it's the same story. They're not cheap, but they're affordable. And then the ridiculously high-priced Shohei Ohtani is totally worth it. Ohtani at the top of the lineup, over 346 plate appearances. We're looking at MVP caliber numbers again. 321, 398, 632, a 311 ISO, 23 home runs, 16 stolen bases. Just a stick of dynamite at the top of the lineup. Will Smith, one of the top catchers in baseball with 11 home runs, 207 ISO, creating runs 30% better than average. Doesn't really strike out, draws his walks, gets on base like crazy, hits the ball really hard. Nothing not to like about Will Smith. Freddie Freeman for 58, 37, 298, 402, 498. One of the best first basemen in baseball. 11 home runs, a 201 ISO, creating runs 54% better than average. Teoscar Hernandez, premium contact galore at Hernandez. Yeah, he strikes out a fair amount. Could be a very good strikeout target for Garrett Crochet, but a premium right-handed power bat that's definitely going to threaten Crochet. He's given up just a 2.84% home run rate so far, 7.3% barrels, a medium launch angle, 38% hard hits, 88 miles an hour of exit velo. This, and this are good. Those are right where we want them. The launch angle's fine. So I believe in his ability to keep home runs around this kind of a level. But none of that is to say that Teoscar Hernandez or any one of these top-end guys couldn't hit a home run against him. You've got Shohei unstoppable at 8.33, but below the magic number. Will Smith better than halfway. Teoscar better than halfway. Freddie falling a little bit behind for the lefty-lefty of it. Andy Pages a little bit maybe underappreciated, just not enough track record for him yet. But over 241 plate appearances, he's got 8 home runs, a 164 ISO. He's making very, very good contact from the right side. 4,200, a nice little discounted bat to not skip and help you average down the price there a little bit. Now you're looking at $54.40 a piece on DraftKings. If you went like that and say, I crazily wanted to skip Shohei Ohtani's monster $4,900 price on FanDuel, then I could use these guys for $3,400 a piece. It's not bad. Miguel Rojas, Miguel Vargas, Enrique Hernandez, and Chris Taylor at the bottom of the lineup. These two are having the worst seasons of their career. They're both multi-position eligible on FanDuel. You get 7 positions across the guys with a little bit of overlap, but I think they fill every position. On DraftKings, only Taylor has second base eligibility. He's got outfield as well. Hernandez stuck at third base. Less than ideal. More playable at second base. Mix and match your way through these combinations if you want those guys. Vargas has been good over his 32 opportunities so far. This year, he's got a home run and a stolen base with a decent line. Last year, over 304. Sub Mendoza, limited on base, 7 home runs, 3 steals. Wasn't good. Same with Miguel Rojas. He's been okay over 138, 277, 319, 431, 3 homers, 3 steals. Creating runs 14% better than average. He's been effective. A playable middle infield bat, 2,500, triple position eligible on FanDuel. And 3,800 in both middle infield spots on DraftKings. If you go to the White Sox, they're facing James Paxton. Wish they were facing Garrett Crochet. Maybe someday soon. Paxton makes it more challenging. The White Sox are not good. I think we've firmly established that this season. James Paxton, though, also really not very good anymore. 3.65 ERA, that's nice for the surface, but a 5.18 xFIP on the back of a 15.4% strikeout rate, which comes from 8% swinging strikes and a 22.4% CSW. An 11.8% walk rate, that's where your 5.18 xFIP comes from. A lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo, fairly aggressively high launch angle. Maybe getting a little bit lucky to limit home runs to just 2.87%. Did strike out 8 at Coors Field in his most recent start. Gave up a solo home run and 2 hits total, just the 1 earned run. Went 7 innings. It's a great start at Coors Field. I got to give it to him. 6 innings to start before that. Just 1 earned run on 2 hits. Was pretty effective there against Texas, but only struck out 2, walked 2. So very limited DFS output in that one. Had a really bumpy one against the Pirates of all teams. 6 earned runs on 6 hits. Struck out just 2. No home run there. But a couple games before those, they gave up 2 home runs apiece in 2 back-to-back games against Cincinnati. Just a much more gettable version of James Paxton. So even if it doesn't lead to White Sox bats, which I do think around the right guys, maybe it could, at least in a few shares for value. Even if it doesn't lead you that direction, I don't think it really leads us, especially here, 8,600. It's a plus matchup for Paxton. The White Sox have been awful. I just feel like this is pricey for a thin option on a day with a lot of better values. Even that, it could be more in the mix on DraftKings, but that's pricier than he should be anyway. Again, right there. Not falling off the face of the earth, but he represents the cut line. Do you really want to go to the guy who is the cut line? I mean, there is appeal against facing Chicago. What's his ownership? I will give you appeal from facing Chicago and from the fact that he is not projected for heavy ownership. But there's a reason he's not projected for heavy ownership. He's been largely unplayable in a lot of spots this year. I think we got the Dodgers lineup. Oh, the White Sox just dropped as well. Lou Bob and Eloy are in it. So one of the few games all season where we'll have both Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez in the lineup. Tommy Pham from the top. Look at all the righties. That is an entirely right-handed lineup, ladies and gentlemen. Not really a ton of pinch hit risk either. Like if you're thinking about rolling the White Sox. There's nobody in this lineup that's like, oh man, they're going to have him in there the whole game? That's weird. You might get like a Gavin Sheets pinch hit spot at some point. But there's nobody who's like, wow, that guy's going to have to come out. Dion leads the team with 14 home runs, 222 ISO, 106 WRC plus. Everything else about his slash line looks pretty bad. He's just a power hitting shortstop. 3,200 on DraftKings at short, 2,800 on FanDuel. He's playable. 9.03 in the home run model, 9.80 for Eloy Jimenez in his return to the lineup or second or third game back. Again, as I said, was dealing with soreness again over the weekend, but looks like he's playing through. Premium contact galore. Only costs $4,000 in the outfield on DraftKings, $2,600. For who this guy is supposed to be when healthy, and he's never healthy, these are ridiculously low prices. Even for just like who he is right now, given the contact profile. Low strikeout, a lot of balls in play. That's a really low price for Jimenez against the mediocre to bad lefty. Lubot, love the home run upside over the magic number 12.93. Definitely would be a go-to bat in this lineup if you're stacking them. If you're just looking for a one-off, I think he's ideal from this lineup. 7 home runs, 3 stolen bases. Some Mendoza right now, over 98 plate appearances, been absent for most of the season, but has had games where he's just absolutely mashed the ball when he's been here. 20.8% barrels, 47.2% hard hits. Only cost 5,300. Absolute priority in that lineup. Andrew Vaughn for 36.29, 9 home runs, pretty mediocre slash line, sub 300 on base, 90 WRC plus. Nobody's idea of a good player, capable of hitting the ball hard. I'll give him that. And there will be frequent contact. There's an abundance of contact available, and there should be guys on base. So at a point, you do want to buy a little bit of contact ability, and he definitely gives you that. It's about all he gives you, though. Tommy Pham gives you a little bit more. He's got a good average, pretty good on base, gives you a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, 109 WRC plus so far this year, over 181. Fairly long track record of multi-category contributions from Tommy Pham. 44.31, reasonable price in the leadoff spot. If you're stacking this team, you're not skipping Tommy Pham. It would be priority-wise like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then fifth man, it's almost certainly just Andrew Vaughn in a straight line there. Lennon Sosa for 2,300, not ideal at third base. Second base eligibility on FanDuel makes him a little bit more interesting. 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, a 104 ISO, 64 WRC plus, over 112 plate appearances. Has hit the ball fairly effectively at 45.6% hard hits when he's made contact. Last year hit 6 home runs and 173 plate appearances. Year before, just 34 plate appearances. So a pretty limited option down there, but he is very, very cheap. I just don't love the third base option. I think you can get a better option, better player at third. Corey Lee at catcher has 5 stolen bases, 7 home runs, a little bit of speed, a little bit of a multi-category contributor, low average, low on base, 91 WRC plus. A mix and match catcher at best. Corey Julks for 35.26, just another outfielder, 3 home runs, 3 steals, mediocre slash line. And then Danny Mendick is nobody's idea of a go-to. He does have 2 homers and 4 steals and 116 at the bottom of the lineup, right at the Mendoza line, and a 241 on base percentage. That's impressively bad. He was all right in 106 plate appearances 2 years ago. 3 homers and a stolen base, 289, 343, 443. If that guy showed up today, you could have a little bit of a day as a wraparound, but obviously we're dealing with a very low-end option when we're talking about the 9-hitter from the White Sox. So I think we're going top of the board, Garrett Crochet, followed immediately, very close on his heels, those Dodgers bats. And then I really don't think we're playing James Paxton here. Maybe a couple shares on DraftKings. It's a gettable spot for him, but does he hit the top of the board for those prices, especially on FanDuel for 86? He's got to have a day for that price on FanDuel and then still have some of the top pitchers fail. White Sox bats, I think they're the more appealing part of that. I'll put them third, Paxton fourth. Very, very limited low priority White Sox bats, though. Let's see, we got lineups. Oh, so the now both of these lineups are in. Dodgers official, Ohtani, Smith, Freeman, Pajes, Andy Pajes batting fourth. No Teoscar today. Upgrade for the Crochet spot. Miguel Rojas, Miguel Vargas, Enrique Hernandez, Chris Taylor, and Jason Hayward, lefty batting ninth. Taking Teoscar out, obviously you've still got a ridiculous top 3 here, but that's definitely a little bit of a bump for Garrett Crochet. Monty's amazing that Paxton and Profar will likely be NL All-Stars. You think Paxton makes the All-Star team? Just based on Dodgers? We don't have pitching on here. Okay. Why does this voting tabulator not have pitching on it? That's annoying. Is there only voting on hitters this year? Why would neither of these include pitching? No, whatever. Who cares? It would be weird to me if James Paxton pitching like this made the All-Star game. Anthony Taylor likes Mamba and T. Crochet K's stack. Clintwood says the Dodgers equal leverage. Yeah, but I mean, now we're looking at a lineup that is, that is not our beginning of the season Dodgers. Again, still really threatening, really good looks there. But it's a diminished version of that Dodgers lineup for sure. Marlins, Royals, top spot on the board for me. Pitching-wise, love the look of Cole Ragans today. We've got the Royals lineup, and then backed up by the top offense on the board, both fantasy-wise and implied total-wise. 5.88 implied total for the Kansas City Royals today, showing a good amount of power through the middle here against CJ Alexander on the slate. Just see if he's in here. Jason Alexander, George from Seinfeld is in here. Doesn't look like he's on the board. So we're seeing a good amount of power through the middle here for the Royals. Ton of upside from the weather. Again, 100 degrees and the wind blowing out. Definitely makes this an appealing spot for bats. And then Cole Ragans not overly threatened by the Marlins, even with those hitting conditions. He's just spectacular, so I'm not really worried about it. Obviously, if you get a few runs against, that $11,000 at the top of the FanDuel price board could really hurt you really quickly. Not the most high-priced pitcher on DraftKings. Comes in number 2 behind Tanner Houck. So definitely appealing for Ragans. He's got a 28.9% strikeout rate going up against the projected version of the Miami lineup that has a 23% rate. 3.13 ERA with a 3.21 xFIP. 110 mark by Stuff Plus, 10 points above average. Love the arsenal. Limiting home runs effectively this season, 1.59% home run rate. Monster strike thrower, 14.3% induced swinging strikes. Looks like a terrific top-end option today. Projects out very, very well. Last time out against Oakland, gave up 2 earned, walked 4, which isn't great. Struck out 7. A 4 strikeout game with 3 earned runs and 2 home runs allowed. That was against the Dodgers. Gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs. Still booked a quality start, but only 4 strikeouts. That was a little bit more problematic. Seattle struck out 9. Struck out high of 12 on the season. He struck out 9 multiple times through the season. Premium option against a very gettable Marlins team. Coming back the other way, I do not think the same way about Roderi Munoz at the top here. 5.76 ERA with a 4.39 xFIP, walking 11%. He is striking out 23.6% over his 29 2/3 in his 6 starts. He's completed the 6th inning twice. He's come out of games before completing the 5th inning twice, 3 times. In those 3 games, he gave up 6 earned, 4 earned, and 6 earned. Struck out 3, 3, and 5. Walked 4 exactly in 2 of those. Gave up 2 home runs in 1 of those. And then in the other 2, he gave up, in his most recent start, 3 home runs. And then in the other start where he got blown up, that was against the Dodgers, but he gave up 4 home runs in that one. And that's how we get to all this home run upside for the Royals. That's what I was talking about when I said I had to go in and tweak it and tell the model about how rough it's been for home runs for Munoz. That's how you get to, remember when I said that 4% is usually the line for you've been pretty bad with home runs? This is more than double that. So, yeah, seems really targetable. A 15.9% barrel rate against all these barrels seems pretty targetable. 50% hard hits. Nearly 91 miles an hour of exit velo. I think everybody's going to be on the Royals today, and I really don't care. I think they're easy to use. They're super cheap on both sites. You can combine them with basically anything. And like I said, when I built on FanDuel, it was a direct line to having Cole Ragans in that as well. I've got Ragans plus 4 Royals, a 3-man from the Athletics, and a 1-off. By the end of the show, you'll be able to figure out who the one-off is. I think. If we're looking at Marlins real quick, I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to hedge any kind of position for Raggins. He is that good. No issues with doing it without a hedge, playing him without a net. That said, you do have a bunch of really cheap Marlins on the other side. If you wanted to dabble with them in a they're cheap and nobody's going there kind of a sense, so be it. That's your call. Everybody below halfway to the magic number for home run upside. You do have power bats like Jake Berger, but he's having a pretty rough season, just a 123 ISO, 6 home runs. Is making decent contact, 10.7% barrels, 43.4% hard hits from the right side. Brian De La Cruz has a pretty good contact profile as well, 11.7% barrels, 43% hard hits. He's turned that into a decent season. 14 home runs and 326 plate appearances, a 185 ISO, one of the 2 positive run creators in this projected version of the lineup. Otto Lopez from the top spot for 24-23, just a mix and match part. 241, 274, 343. Not an ideal slash line over 148 from a leadoff hitter. Does have 5 stolen bases, 3 home runs on the season. Josh Bell, 8 homers, mixed line, 246, 309, 381. Pretty weak on the front and the back end of that slash line with a mediocre on base percentage. Really hasn't given us a ton. For a guy who was supposed to be a pretty big deal, had one really good season for home run output and been bad to mediocre throughout the rest of his career. Jazz Chisholm, 4,500, 3,100, lefty, not ideal against one of the top lefties in the league. Does have 10 home runs and 13 stolen bases, a 178 ISO, creating runs 16% better than average. You're probably playing Jazz if you're going to the Marlins just for the upside of something happens and they chase Cole Raggins and then you want him. Tim Anderson's been surging a little bit. That surge has got him up to 229, 253, 243, a .014 ISO. Entirely skippable at shortstop for 2,100 on both sides. Dane Myers, 25, 21 across sites. At best, just another outfielder, and he's really not even that. Emmanuel Rivera, 2,000, dead min on both sides. Both corners on FanDuel, no thanks. Third base only on DraftKings, no thanks. And then Nick Fortes, also the dead minimum at the bottom of the lineup, does have 2 home runs this season and is a big no thank you. Top of the Royals lineup, Mr. Michael Garcia, batting leadoff again with his 291 on-base percentage. 5 home runs, 17 stolen bases. I understand that he's fast. I like the player. I hate the spot in the lineup, but for DFS, it actually is beneficial to keep just getting those plate appearances, right? It's not an effective option for them. It's not great for DFS for some of the other guys to have a guy who doesn't really get on base in the leadoff spot. But for him as an individual, it actually creates more upside for DFS. 44.2% hard hits this season, only strikes out 16.5% of the time. A lot of well-struck balls in play. 4,400, I'm happy to get him at third base on DraftKings. 3,000 on FanDuel, totally happy with the option. 5 homers, 17 steals. Bobby Witt is an absolute superstar. 14.4% barrel rate, 48.1% hard hits. 6,500, 4,200 across sites at shortstop. You just plug him into your lineup. 12 home runs, 21 steals, a 144 WRC+, plus, a 220 ISO, and everybody else is cheap around him. So it just averages that price right down. I don't even care that he's expensive. Say you want the top 4 on FanDuel from the top team of the day with a almost 6 run implied total. Well, that's going to cost you $3,200 a man. You think you can afford that? It includes Bobby Witt. It also includes Sal Perez and Vinny Pasquantino. Let's say on DraftKings you wanted to go to a full 5-man. And we'll just go, I'm going to include MJ because I prefer MJ to Massey. Even though, actually, no. If I was doing that, I'd probably want the second baseman. So you go like that, and now I'm getting an entire infield. The top 5 from the Royals gives you a full infield on DraftKings. First base, Vinny Pasquantino for 43. Catcher, Sal Perez for 51. Second base, 3,500 from Michael Massey. Third base, 4,400 from Michael Garcia. And you cap it with Bobby Witt at shortstop for 65. I filled up my infield with the top offense on the slate, and they only cost me 4,700 a piece to do it. Pretty compelling. They're going to be super popular. There's no getting around their popularity today. I think they're totally worth doing. Vinny's got a 45.9% hard hit rate with an 8.2% barrel rate. He's got 7 home runs on the season over 307 plate appearances. We've talked enough about how everything else about his line is going to improve if he just keeps on doing what he's doing. Striking out 13.4% of the time, walking 10.1%, and hitting the ball as hard as he does will eventually yield better results in terms of the actual output in those stats. I promise. He's super cheap on DraftKings at 43. He's very affordable on FanDuel at 28. 11.51 in the home run model is a tiebreaker if you need it. Sal Perez for 51.29 is a top catcher option. 13.2% barrels, 47% hard hits. He's got 11 home runs, a 280, 353, 455 slash line with a 123 WRC plus. Absolutely mashes with a 13.42 in the home run model. Mike Massey's got an 11.17 in the home run model. Not to be skipped. He's got 6 on the season and 110 plate appearances, a 294, 306, 529, 235 ISO. He's been tremendous at second base in his limited opportunities. He must have been hurt. I didn't remember him getting hurt, but I know we haven't talked about him in a minute. Last year, 15 home runs, a 152 ISO over 461 less effective plate appearances, but it's nice to see that there was power upside last year. Another guy who isn't anyway. Last year, 21.5% strikeouts. This year so far, 14.5%. MJ from the left side against this pitcher who's given up all these home runs and had this much of an issue with contact. I will take MJ's upside for premium contact today, especially if other people are leaving it on the table. I know he's not reliable. I do not care. Just give me my 10.5% barrels, my 43.1% hard hits that is sustained over the last 2 seasons. This is the reason I liked MJ coming into the season. It's the reason I still like MJ. I'm just a little bit disappointed in him right now. 234 plate appearances, 181, 244, 366. That's awful. 8 home runs, I'll take. But it's definitely not the output I'm expecting, not the output I want. But as in any given slate with tremendous power upside DFS option today, I absolutely love that spot. And if it's going under owned, so much the better. Hunter Renfroe for 31.25. Same things apply from the right side with a diminished contact profile over the last couple seasons. He was once a tremendous power hitter. You could definitely see that upside come through today. 194, 273, 354 this season, only 6 home runs and a 160 ISO. CJ Alexander doesn't appear to be available, but he is about to turn 28 years old. And this is his major league debut. Not a good combination of factors there. 9 home runs in the minors this year in AAA, over 237 plate appearances, 2 stolen bases, 323, 369, 555 is very effective. Had a 232 ISO, 135 WRC plus. He was on a bit of a tear in AAA. But again, bear in mind that's a 27-year-old at 27.5-year-old at AAA. Last year is a 26.5-year-old at AAA, 314 plate appearances, 13 homers, 4 steals, just 220, 280, 423, triple slash 68 WRC plus. Did have that 203 ISO though. And the only reason I'm talking about him, unless he gets added to sites, is just in terms of, is this a guy who can effectively keep the lineup moving, or maybe create some runs, knock in some of these guys, what have you. Seems at least effective for that. So not a dead spot late in the lineup. And then Kyle Isbell, 23-24, is kind of a dead spot late in the lineup. 229, 274, 367. Does have his 5 homers, 4 steals. Cheap lefty bat at the bottom of the lineup. Cole Ragan's way up top, followed honestly not all that far behind by what will be a very popular Royal stack. But I think there are going to be some avenues of lesser popularity. I'll throw Massey into that mix as well. I don't know how popular Massey gets today. Like both of these lefties lurking down here. Puts an interesting angle too. I wasn't expecting Massey. I'm going to have to go back and look at that stack I built and see if that buys me anything at second base. Rangers and the Brewers. Freddie Peralta going for the Brewers. Mama's got 3 home runs in Cincinnati today in his model. I like that Cincinnati upside. RC player nails it. 98 and wind blowing out in Kaufman. Definitely good to go there. Almost forgot no NHL props. No. Have we talked NHL props before? Is that game tonight? I had completely forgotten. I'll definitely be watching. What's our, let's see. Connor McDavid, 3.5 shots. You can get under 3.5 shots at minus 130. That feels light. Take the upside on that. McDavid, 1.5 assists. Under 1.5 assists is minus 230. Where's the goals? Matthew Tkachuk, minus 175 for over half a point. Minus 110 under half a point, point and a half for McDavid. Could take the over on that. Oh, this is actually our, I didn't even realize. This is our guys over, our former guys. This is Betting Pros board that I just Googled and pulled up. Believe that used to be, oh no, that's not them, is it? No, this is Fantasy Pros site. I was about to say I believe that used to be called Odd Shopper because it looks very similar. Anyway, it was a little look at NHL player props. For whatever reason, from a guy who completely forgot that game was tonight. Rangers and Brewers. Let's grab these lineups. Keep talking baseball. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. I'd love to find a way to do hockey content this coming NHL season, but it's just not enough bandwidth for me to be able to do it. And that's not the Rangers. That's the Brewers. There we go. I'm already dreading when it's going to be the little limited stretch. There'll be some baseball. And baseball and football is a longer stretch. And then baseball at the very end of the season when basketball starts up. I think that's just about playoffs, though. So maybe we just won't cover playoff baseball. Kind of like we didn't cover playoff basketball all that much. So, Freddie, 95-98 across sites. Feel like we're getting a bit of a discount on a guy with a 31% strikeout rate over 15 starts, 82 innings. I know he's inflated a little bit in the ERA department at 4.06, but this is certainly non-tragic, and it pairs with a 3.37 xFIP, 13.7% swinging strike rate, 28% CSW, 8.5% walks. He's given up a little bit more on the barrels, 10% barrels this year. Last year, that was 8.5. The year before, 3.5. So that's gone up each of the past couple seasons. Something to watch a little bit with Freddie. He was spectacular this year at limiting premium contact. And it's definitely inflated a little bit over the past 2 seasons. But overall, and by and large, he's pitching very, very well and very similarly to last year's very strong season overall. Happy to go to Freddie Peralta shares here. Not an unthreatening opponent. The other side, we've got Semyon Seager, Josh Smith, Adolis Garcia, Nathaniel Lowe, Wyatt Langford. So their everyday version of this lineup. 19.7% strikeouts is a little bit limiting, but that's a effective 1 in 5 with a pitcher on the mound who knows how to get that up to 1 in 4 or better. 8 strikeouts in a 3-hit 6-inning performance against the Angels the last time out. Problematic start the game before that. Went 5 1/3 against Cincinnati, but gave up 6 earned runs on 10 hits. Struck out 6, 2 home runs allowed. That was a rough one. Had that 6-run game. Immediately before that were 2 3-run games. One of them was only 3 1/3. Struck out 3, but walked 5 against Detroit at Detroit. 3 earned runs on 4 hits. That's a meltdown start. The start before that was okay. 3 earned runs over 5 innings, but we didn't get the quality start there. Didn't get the quality start the game before that, over 5 2/3. He only gave up 1 earned run on 3 hits in that one, and he struck out 11. That was against the Cubs. Would have liked to have gotten the quality start bonus on top of that from my money, and he didn't get the win bonus on that game. But that's a pretty effective start. Had a really strong run. Well, not even actually. Strong run like over 2 or 3 games, but there's been a couple times where 5 runs have cropped up on him this season. Outside of just a few pop-up warts, though, we're really not sweating Freddie Peralta. And since you get those warts paying for a little bit of a discount here, we'll take them. No issues with it. Not my favorite spot on the board targeting Texas, but I think believably projects out as number 2 here. And again, he's got them checked down to just, 3.51 implied runs? Looks like a pretty strong option. His team's going up against Michael Lorenzen. He's got a 17.5% strikeout rate with a 10.5% walk, a 3.0 ERA, but a 4.61 xFIP looming under the surface, 9% swinging, just 25.8% CSW, a lot of hard hits on a fly ball-ish trajectory, 7.4% barrels, just 88 miles an hour of exit velo, saving the day a little bit, 3.50% home runs and a below average mark from Stuff Plus. Capable of breaking off a pretty effective start here and there, capable of giving you 6 clean innings, has done that a number of times this year. Last time out, 6 innings, 3 earned runs on 4 hits, struck out just 3, walked 1, gave up 2 homers. That was against the Mets. Good start against the Dodgers the game before that. Just 1 earned run on a solo homer, 4 hits, but only 2 strikeouts, 1 walk. Only 1 strikeout, 2 walks, 2 home runs allowed, 2 runs on 7 hits over 4 1/3 against the Giants to start before that. Some weird ones in there. But then had a little run before that of 8 starts in which he completed at least the 6th inning. 2 of those were not quality starts. The others were. Pitched into the 7th in that stretch 3 times. Between 4 and 7 strikeouts over that stretch. That's the upside. Every Schwartz has an upside and a downside. That's the upside. The downside is the limited strikeout rate overall, the walks, the problems with runs under the surface, the more predictive numbers showing a little bit of run upside, and a pretty good Brewers lineup on the other side. .89 Sierra, which again over time Sierra is actually a better predictor of ERA, so the Sierra is even higher than the xFIP. I think he's a playable dart at 73. If you're building 150 lineups, you could throw him in there a couple of times at 7,300 on DraftKings. At 85 on FanDuel, I just don't think we go there. Really, really limited. Would be pretty surprising if he had a, wow, Michael Lorenzen won somebody the slate today kind of a start at that price. You need a lot to break your way at that price. At 73 on DraftKings, he's just another value option. Not in a great spot, though. You can see all the good run creation from the Brewers. A lot of good options in this lineup. Number of guys not running away with home run marks, but better than halfway to the magic number with Rhys Hoskins at 8.5. Not a bad stretch of hitters to start things off. Bryce 2 ranked 26 stolen bases on the season, getting on at a 357 clip, creating runs 22% better than average. 49-34 at second base. Totally worth paying for there. William Contreras, 56-32, mashing the ball, 9 home runs, 5 stolen bases, a terrific slash line, 126 WRC+. 150 ISO, we've taken a little bit of a dip in the power output, but it really hasn't come with a diminished contact profile. Still 52.1% hard hits. Yelich, 45.8% hard hits. The barrels were up a little higher than this previously. 7 home runs, 15 steals has been just tremendous this season. But I'd like to see that barrel rate bounce back up like this so we get a few more home runs along the way. It's never going back into like the 30s and 40s for home run upside. But I'd love to see 20, 25. Willy Adames for 51-35, very playable, 13 home runs, 10 steals, a 120 WRC+, a 192 ISO. Not a bad option at shortstop. Very good contact profile. Not striking out like crazy this year at just 21.2%. Drawing some walks at 11.8%. A lot of walks through here to work against Lorenzen's bad walk rate. And nobody really, at least in the hitters that we care about, striking out at like egregiously high clips. This gets a little bit of bonus from these 3 guys. But it's a rough spot for Lorenzen. Hoskins for just 41.29 has 10 home runs, a 188 ISO, 13.3% barrels. Doing Rhys Hoskins things up there. Totally like the option. Sal Frelick, more of a contact-oriented hitter, plays decent outfield, 258, 335, 331. Knows how to get on base, 10 stolen bases. He's an effective option. But you can see 6% worse than average creating runs and no real power to speak of. Probably a better bat when he's up in this kind of territory as a table setter rather than a guy down here resetting the table for more limited options behind. Jackson Chourio, 3,100, 2,700, has 7 home runs and 8 steals, but is just maddeningly inconsistent. 40.4% hard hits, a lot of strikeouts in his rookie season. Kid's just like 20 years old, so we got to give him time. The counting stats are good. He is a DFS option more often than not, but we've gotten a lot of disappointment along the way. That's why he's so cheap at 31.27 for his ridiculous talent level. Blake Perkins, 33.28, 5 home runs, 10 steals, doesn't have the same ridiculous talent level. He's just cheap, but he's been on and off effective this year. 27.2% strikeouts is pretty high, though. Andrew Monasterio, a mix and match infielder at the bottom of the lineup. If you're going to the Rangers against Freddie Peralta, I would strongly advise staying up toward that kind of territory, although Wyatt Langford has really been coming on of late over the past 2 weeks or so, and Nathaniel Lowe is a pretty good hitter. This is a lineup of good hitters. I mean, technically, against a lot of other pitchers, this is a lineup I'd be saying, oh, this team is playable 1 through 9. I like some of these sneaky options down the bottom, so on and so forth. You guys have heard me talk about these guys over the last 2 years. But for one thing, Ezekiel Duran and Leody Taveras not exactly having the strong seasons that they had last year. It's kind of been a little bit diminished, a little bit mixed, 79 WRC plus and a 72 WRC plus. Taveras has given you some counting stats, but everything else has been pretty off, and he's not getting on base enough to really support the stolen base upside. Ezekiel Duran's giving you a little bit of average, but not much else alongside that. So they're just kind of mix and match quality at the bottom of the lineup now. Jonah Heim for 33.28, totally playable. He's got 6 home runs and 253 plate appearances, but a pretty diminished, pretty disappointing ISO, just a 103 ISO, 72 WRC plus. So nobody's idea of a priority there. So really we're dealing with the top 6. Semien and Seager for 5,000, 5,200 on DraftKings, 35.36 on FanDuel. This is cheaper than this is, but they're effectively underpriced by a couple hundred here. And they're cheap-ish over here on DraftKings. 11 home runs for Semien, a 165 ISO is down a little bit, 106 WRC plus, still effective run creator. Doesn't really strike out, puts the ball in play, hits it with authority. Corey Seager's just really, really good. 14 home runs, a 189 ISO that is also down a little bit, a 117 WRC plus, but mashing the ball from the left side when he makes contact, and he makes a lot of contact. He also draws walks. For 5,200, 3,600, you can one-off Seager if you wanted to. It is Freddie Peralta on the other side, so we don't get too carried away with it. But Semien at 8.48, not a bad power option. And then Seager, with the increased power and premium contact that Peralta's allowed, believably over the magic number for home run upside. Josh Smith has a tremendous profile this season. 303, 391 on base, and a 478 slug. Pretty damn good. 175 ISO, 7 home runs, not making like ridiculous premium contact. If he had this barrel rate this season, we'd be seeing even more, home run upside from him. But what he is giving him is a tremendous OPS, on base plus slugging. So I mean, we're at a 869 OPS from a fairly limited $3,700 option on DraftKings. 31 on FanDuel is a little bit cheap. Shortstop and third base eligible. At 37 on DraftKings is very cheap. You obviously just stick him at third base with Seager at shortstop on both sides. Adolis Garcia at least has 13 home runs overall. He's been a little bit limited this year, though. Just a 276 on base really caps his stolen base upside. 214 averages in any great shakes. 185 ISO is down. 86 WRC plus is downright disappointing. Still making very good contact, but it's diminished somewhat. We're down about 3 points in barrel rate. We're down about 4 or 5 points in hard hit rate so far this year. But an immense talent in the outfield, a premium power bat over the last few years, a guy who can steal a base if he manages to get on. He is underpriced for 4,200 on DraftKings. 3,200 on FanDuel is at least a little bit more explicable. This is just mind-bogglingly low. Speaking of low, Nathaniel Lowe. 3,400, 2,900. Still cheap. 262, 357, 346. Just keep getting on base. Everything else will round into form. Hasn't quite been the hitter that I've been selling him as, but is definitely creating runs, is getting on base, has been involved and been effective, and he's a very cheap lefty bat in this lineup if you're going to them. Wyatt Langford, as mentioned, surging over the last couple of weeks. We're up to 3 home runs and 7 stolen bases. 2 of those home runs came over the last 2 weeks. 92 WRC plus, 117 ISO. Long way to go to get to quality, but at least a pretty decent contact profile for the rookie. Signs of life. So pretty limited down here. Playable options up here, but they're in a terrible matchup against Freddie Peralta. I just greatly prefer the Peralta side. Even if these guys do succeed, I feel like it's more in a two of them got there, the rest of them didn't kind of a sense. Maybe not an overly appealing DFS day. Like maybe Seager hits his home run and you get like a 2-3 run home run. damages the ceiling for Freddie Peralta, but doesn't lead to a crazy Rangers day. Peralta, Brewers bats, Rangers bats fairly far below those, but playable. Michael Lorenzen really, really thin. Oops. Let's see if we got this A's lineup since I want to talk about it so much. Advance notice, just file this one away in the plays that Terry made make a lot of sense as he was talking about them, but didn't really end up working out. Kind of a drawer. I can definitely see that from these underperforming, disappointing, and not that good Oakland A's. But Griff Canning's a pitcher we've just kind of made a quiet agreement. Maybe you guys didn't know about it, but I made the agreement with you. We're just targeting this pitcher all season. And so far, it's been working out. 3.99% home runs, 91 miles an hour of exit velo allowed, a 43.3% hard hit rate allowed, 8.4% barrels allowed. Last year, that was a 4.10 with 91, 42.4, and 9.8. He's been super targetable for home run upside. Last year, he was striking guys out at almost a 26% rate. This year, it's just 15%. So there's not only all this quality contact available, there's a lot more frequency of contact available this season. That's how you get to a 5.02 ERA with a 4.93 xFIP. He just hasn't been good. He gives up a fair amount of free passes as well. It's really, really targetable pitcher here. You can see some premium contact upside coming through for the A's on this side. They're very, very cheap, especially if you're combining them with, the Royals, who are very cheap. Leads directly to premium pitching. Don't dislike that option at all. I think you could probably do the same thing. You could make the same argument with just, lesser numbers backing you up for the Angels against Luis Medina. But as discussed at the top of the show, for one reason, slightly above average rating by Stuff Plus for what his arsenal looks like. We saw a little bit better version of Medina last year. 4.71 ERA and a 5.67 xFIP. Limited strikeout profile, strike throwing profile. Even last year, better swinging strike rate, but a pretty limited strike throwing profile overall, and he walked too many. More than capable of getting himself into a lot of trouble against this Angels team. But I think between the two pitchers, there's no ownership for a cheaper price, and these are DraftKings only options. I would kind of prefer targeting this Angels team with him if I had to pick one, than for 600 more targeting this A's team with him. Dicey proposition either way if you're rostering pitching of any kind in this game. But Medina last time out, 5 2/3 of 3 strikeout, 1 run ball, gave up 6 hits to the Royals, 2 walks. It's an effective start. 5 innings against the Twins, he gave up 4 earned runs, struck out 3, walked 1 and gave up 8 hits. 4 2/3 against the Blue Jays, gave up 6 earned runs on 5 hits, struck out just 1 and walked 5. Ugly one there. 5 2/3 against the Braves at Atlanta. Struck out 6, walked 2. No home runs, no earned runs. 1 unearned run on 2 hits. So again, 2 good ones, 2 bad ones. Or 2 playable ones for 5,500 anyway. Don't care about the quality start on DK. So, yeah. Slightly playable. Let's see if we got these lineups in though. Angels we have, and the A's it doesn't look like we've got yet, which is annoying. Let's see if Underdog's got it. Angels, Rangers, Brewers, nope. No such luck. So we'll do some educated guesses at the A's lineup. The version that Labs has up doesn't look too crazy to me. Max Schumann off the top. You could certainly do better at the top of the lineup. I wouldn't object to say moving like Zach Geloff up there despite some underperformance over his 236 plate appearances this year. Fairly strong argument could be made that Tyler Soderstrom could grab that spot. JJ Bleday wouldn't look completely crazy in that spot. Schumann just 2,500, 2,300. If he's leading off, he does gain correlation, at least, from these guys. But I mostly prefer the options under Schumann here. He's got 3 home runs and 4 stolen bases and 87 WRC plus and 195 plate appearances. No track record last year. JJ, that's what I wanted to look at. 310 on base last year, 277. Blade I like for a home run upside, 9.34 in the home run model, followed immediately by Miguel Andujar at 9.37. And then 2 of the big guys, Brent Rooker and Shea Langoliers, a couple spots later, both over the magic number. But I like these guys hiding in the 9s and then the 6s throughout this lineup. Blade, 8.8% barrels on the season, has 11 home runs and 322 plate appearances, has a 214 ISO, 131 WRC plus, has been quietly very good for this team so far this year. 3,600 on DraftKings, 2,800 on FanDuel. Easy to bolt into a lineup. Andujar, outfield only on DraftKings, 3,900, but I don't mind him there. Solid 9.37 in the home run model, over 109 plate appearances. He's been very effective. Creating runs 20% better than average, 324, 339, 419 slash line. Rooker has a 16.1% barrel rate. Soderstrom has a 16.4, and Shea Langoliers has a 16.9. 2 premium right-handed power bats, and then a lefty who's been mashing in a short sample, going up against one of the more targetable home run hitters and power allowers, whatever, in the league. Those 3 look really appealing in the heart of the lineup here. One of these 3 guys homers today or your money back for this show. 239 ISO, 223 ISO, 235 ISO. 13 home runs for Rooker, 14 home runs for Langoliers, and 6 in just 119 plate appearances from the left side from Mr. Soderstrom. Really like his upside today. Canning particularly vulnerable to lefties. Langoliers, 204, 262, 439 in the rest of the slash line. All he really does is hit home runs. Brent Rooker's been a little bit more than that this year. 138 WRC plus, a 333 on base, drawing some walks, striking out a whole hell of a lot. So does Soderstrom, so does Langoliers. You've got that downside, of course. If Griff Canning suddenly finds his strikeout form, well, there's a few targets for him right there. That's what's feeding people into, or fooling people. That's what's feeding the ownership on Griff Canning. It's what's fooling people into going to Griff Canning. Nevin for 28 and the dead min on FanDuel. That's also kind of interesting. Nothing really to like in the slash line so far from Nevin, but a 41.3% hard hit rate over his 156 plate appearances, 6.10 on the home run model. Fills 3 positions on FanDuel for the dead min price. 2,800 at third base, outfield, totally playable on DK. Geloff, 3,000, 2,600, just very cheap. He's got 8 home runs and 8 steals. He's sub-Mendoza over 236 plate appearances, 157 ISO, and just a 73 WRC plus with a 248 on base that doesn't let him exploit his speed. Last year, 14 homers, 14 steals, and 300 with a 267, 337, 504. Even if you're not this guy, give me a blend of these 2 guys and I'll take it. Like the counting stat upside from Zach Geloff from late in the lineup at a key position. 6.31 in the home run model. Cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Lawrence Butler, 21-22. Mix and match part from the left side at the bottom of the lineup. Angels with the confirmed lineup. And again, I do think you can play some of these guys. Taylor Ward, 7.40 in the home run model, followed by Joe Adell down toward the bottom of the lineup with a 7.10. In between, you've got a little bit of Logan O'Hoppe power. You've got a couple of guys at the top of the lineup with 5s. Mixed quality. You're not getting a ton of upside out of the Angels. Shaniel's hit 8 home runs, but everything else in his slash line has been pretty weak. He's got just an 86 WRC plus. Just a really cheap first baseman from the left side against a mediocre righty. Luis Rengifo's been good. Third base only on DraftKings. Don't love that. I'd rather have him at second or honestly probably shortstop on like on FanDuel. 3,000 on FanDuel is a little bit more expensive, though, than 43 on DraftKings. 4 home runs, 20 steals from Rengifo in 233 plate appearances. A very effective multi-category contributor with a good slash line so far this year. He's been an interesting player. Taylor Ward for 39-27 has 12 home runs, a 181 ISO, 110 WRC plus, doing effective Taylor Ward things. Willie Calhoun, still cheap, lefty bat. I say still cheap, just, he's a guy who puts the ball in play a lot. Doesn't really see a lot of upside from it, though. 88 WRC plus, just 1 home run, 10 ribbies, 306 on base, 268 average just based on some balls in play. The days of those guys being quality is kind of past, unless you're a elite like Luis Arias, Stephen Kwan leadoff type. Zach Neto for 32, 27, up to 10 home runs and 9 stolen bases. 250, 299, 433, settling in as a decent bat, 9.5% barrels. He's playable if you're going to Angel stacks. He's not a priority. He's not a guy to really one-off at shortstop all that often. But he's a higher priority than a lot of these Angels. O'Hop, 10.8% barrels, 48.5% hard hits. He's also got 10 home runs on the season. Adele's got 12. In between, Mickey Moniak really scuffling along. Probably should be out of the lineup at this point. 191, 238, 292. At 238 on base is just unsustainable. You can't have that guy dragging down your lineup. Michael Stefanich, dead min price at second base on FanDuel. Second and third, you probably want him at second base on DraftKings. Reputation of being a very good contact hitter. Hasn't really shown much over 31 plate appearances, but give him a little bit of time. If you're building Angel stacks, it's not the worst bolt-on part for cheap prices at the bottom as a wraparound. A's bats. In particular, Brent Rooker, Tyler Soderstrom, Shea Langoliers. Angels bats. And then DraftKings only, Luis Medina over Griff Canning. They're both garbage from the bottom of the bargain bin. Not only are you picking out a terrible, terrible movie for 99 cents from the bottom of the bargain bin, but when you open it up at home, the DVD inside is going to be broken. That's how bad these are. But they're there. Nationals, Padres. Michael Knack says, too many good catcher first baseman for FanDuel today. Hard to choose. Yeah, there's a couple that I like better than others, but it's definitely a pretty deep slate at that position. Fortunately, FanDuel, you obviously get the second bite at the apple with the util spot, so it makes it interesting to put together. But yeah, especially if you're considering like a Royal stack somewhere along the way, now you're even thinning that out more because you want to go for, in a lot of builds anyway, both Pasquantino and Sal Perez in your lineup. So you're really limited for other first basemen, which is to me another reason why the A's and the Orioles fit together just uniquely well, because by and large, the guys that I want from the A's are either straight up outfielders or have outfield eligibility. The one that you sacrifice probably is Tyler Soderstrom in that combination, which isn't great. And then obviously Shea Langoliers if you're on DraftKings, but you could get Langoliers and then say not Pasquantino with Sal or vice versa. So there's ways of putting it together, but there's a lot of outfield bats that I like. And then now that we've got Mike Massey, remember I said I'm going to go back and see what Massey buys me, because currently I've got Zach Geloff at second base in that lineup that I built. But that'll be an interesting spot to just look at what the pivots are. But I think they do fit together really well based on the positioning, maybe more so on FanDuel with the multi-position eligibility. But like if you're going to three-man those three on DraftKings and just fill the outfield and then build that, right? These three outfielders, and then remember the top five from the Royals built an infield. That's the wrong team. Built an infield. Right? So 5 infielders right there. And then, damn it. And then 3 playable outfielders right there. Or, 1-1, Blade, Rooker, and then you one off the other spot. It's a good combo. I really like that today. Nationals and the Padres. Nats going up against the knuckleballer Matt Waldron. Again, guy who can absolutely eat innings. Knuckleballers have that reputation, and he has certainly delivered on that ability. I was just looking if we had the lineups. 83 and a third over 15 starts. Waldron's got a 22% strikeout rate, 3.46 ERA with a 4.09 xFIP. Stuff Plus, if you haven't been here before, is never going to like a knuckleballer. You can kind of ignore Stuff Plus for Waldron. 31.5% hard hits, just 87.2 miles an hour of exit velo. The barrel rate and the launch angle matter less for a knuckleballer as well, just because knuckleballs tend to come in like 77, 79 miles an hour. Slow in equals slow out in a lot of cases. So just very difficult to square up, difficult to hit home runs against. He did give up a homer in his most recent start. That was at Philadelphia. I think we can forgive that one. Struck out 6, walked 2, that was the only earned run, 5 hits over 7 innings. Went 7 at the Mets in Queens. 2 earned runs on 3 hits, struck out just 2, walked 2. Struck out 4, walked 2 in a 1-run performance, 3 hits allowed over 6 innings against Arizona. 1 earned run allowed on 2 hits over 6 1/3 against the Angels in the start before that. 7 shutout innings of 6-hit ball with 8 strikeouts against Miami the start before that one. So that's a string of 5 straight quality starts in which he hasn't given up more than 2 earned runs. Struck out, outside of the 2 strikeout game, struck out at least 4 with upside to 6, 7, and 8 in 3 of those starts. Oh, excuse me, I threw in a 7 that didn't belong there. That was in a 5-inning performance. 5 innings, 2 earned runs, 6 hits, 7 strikeouts against Cincinnati at Cincinnati before that stretch. Point being, we're looking at a lot of quality starts there. Upside for the win with the Padres going up against Patrick Corbin. Looks pretty playable. 8,300 on the DraftKings slate. Like it a lot. 8,300 on FanDuel. Depends. You still need to find a lane where a lot of these go bust. Probably particularly Justin Steele for 85. Obviously, if one of the top guys goes off and hides with a strikeout total, then you've got bigger problems. But Waldron's a little bit less playable, I think, on the FanDuel slate. More appealing on DK as a pretty high-end mid-range option. Corbin, I just don't play. Haven't in 2 or 3 seasons. I can't remember the last time I used him. 5.60 ERA with a 4.57 xFIP. Way below average by Stuff Plus. All these premium contact events. 48.2% hard hits. 91.4 miles an hour of exit velo. 10.6% barrels. Just target Patrick Corbin with bats. Or even if you don't, just don't play him against the pretty effective, pretty good Padres lineup. 19% strikeouts gives him very little upside on a 15.2% strikeout rate. Not throwing any swinging, not throwing any called strikes. A 1.60 whip is ridiculous, especially when you've got a leadoff hitter like Luis Arraez on the other side who's just going to put the ball in play. Big opportunity, even lefty-lefty, for a 4-hit day for Luis Arraez. A lot of correlation upside. Ties directly into Fernando Tatis in the second spot. 56-36 for him. He's got 14 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 139 WRC plus. Still a little bit behind the curve for ISO, but lots and lots of premium contact against a pitcher who does nothing but yield premium contact to one of the better right-handed power hitters in baseball. 12.84 in the home run model. Jerkson Profar, 4,000, 3,100, the probable all-star, as was mentioned before in the chat. 319, 413, 484, just completely inexplicable output from Profar at this point in his career. 321 plate appearances. I'm at the point now where I'm just like, hey, it's nice to see. Good for him. Finally delivered 10 years too late on his prospect profile from a decade ago. 161 WRC plus. Been tremendous. Manny Machado, 47% hard hits, 7 home runs, 260, 313, 381. Kind of underwhelming slash line. Underwhelming ISO. Below average output for run creation. But we're still making pretty good contact. We're still not striking out all that much. It's up a little bit. Walks are down a little bit. There's still a Manny Machado in there. I'm confident. He's not washed yet. 5,000, 3,300. He's only like 31. Solano for 32.25. Multi-position eligible on FanDuel. Just a third baseman on DraftKings. Not ideal. Rather have the flexibility for 25. 269, 344, 389. Effective at getting on, putting the ball in play. A little bit of power upside. Cronenworth has 12 home runs on the season. Ha-Sung Kim has 10. And Jackson Merrill also has 10. The rookie's been really good. 281 plate appearances. Jackson Merrill not priced up enough on DraftKings. I know he's down lineup. Not an ideal spot in terms of where he hits. But he's been very good. 289, 326, 445, 122 WRC plus. Strikes out just 16% of the time and walks just 5% of the time with all that premium contact. So that, again, say it with me, just equals balls in play. Well-struck balls in play is the name of the game, guys. 3,900 in the outfield. He is kind of just another outfielder there, but that is still a good price on just another outfielder if you're stacking Padres. Same thing on FanDuel. Like the option a lot. Kim, just a bad batting average. He's priced way down, 4,400, 2,900. He's got 10 homers, 15 stolen bases. A 168 ISO is fine, a 109 WRC plus. Last year he had 17 homers and 38 stolen bases. We're basically on that track with a bit more power so far this year. The on-base has come down somewhat. It's the average, really, that created his pricing and created this perception that he hasn't been good this year when he truly has. And then my guy, hiding down the bottom of the lineup, Kyle Higashioka. Our sneaky little catcher, hopefully is in the lineup today. I believe Campusano got put on the IL. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But Higgy's a guy that we've looked at over each of the last few seasons. 10 home runs exactly in a part-time role in 248 and 260 plate appearances while with the Yankees. And we always talked about him when he was in the lineup because of this contact profile. Because he's always hitting ninth and nobody ever goes to him. 9.8% barrels, 48.1% hard hits, and 210. Wish it was 200. 10, be the best player of all time. 10 home runs in 200 and change plate appearances 2 years ago. Last year, 11.1% barrels, 48.3% hard hits, and 10 home runs in 200 and whatever plate appearances. This year, that's even increased on the barrels end. In a limited sample of just 85 plate appearances and an even more limited sample of batted ball events, 14.6% barrels, 11.1 up from 11.1. The hard hits have gone down overall, 48.3 down to 41.7, but he's already got 6 home runs in 85 plate appearances, a 272 ISO. Kyle Higashioka can mash. He's just going to hit home runs. He's not a productive bat. He's not reliable at all. But if you're just looking for a super cheap, sneaky home run option against Patrick Corbin, Kyle Higashioka all day long and twice on Sunday at 2,900. I don't care where he is in the lineup. If you're going to Nationals, obvious bats at the top. C.J. Abrams, that said, C.J. is super expensive. 6,100 on DraftKings. 37 on FanDuel feels a little bit better. 12 home runs, 11 stolen bases. He's been good. Nobody's saying he's not been good, but out of all the crazy underprices that DraftKings has, to have C.J. Abrams of all people at 61? And again, it's nothing against C.J. Abrams. It's just weird that they chose him. He's been good. He's creating runs 26% better than average. 273, 24, 96 is great. Perfectly fine. I like seeing these strides. I think he can improve on even these numbers and get even better going forward. But, like, where was Bobby Witt priced? 65. It's only a $400 difference between those two players in that matchup. Don't know about that. O'Neal Cruz for 48. It's C.J. Abrams has been better, but is there that big a gap? $1,300 price gap? Don't necessarily know if there is. But Abrams is a terrific option. 42% hard hits, getting on. He's mashing the ball when he makes contact, creating a lot of runs. Lane Thomas, 242, 299, 421, pulling himself together a little bit. 8 home runs, 17 stolen bases, creating runs 1% above average. Jesse Winker, keeping my buddy Steve Green happy with his trade where we swapped. I got Ha-Seong Kim. He got Jesse Winker and James Outman. Winker's paying the bills. 264, 380, 410. Stolen 12 bases, hit 8 home runs. Stolen bases are a little bit unexpected. The average is nice to see him back to life. The on base is back to life for previous expectations from this hitter. Good lefty bat with a little bit of power. 3,800 for Eddie Rosario, 27 on FanDuel. He's got 7 home runs and 8 stolen bases. Everybody in this lineup can contribute a little bit in multiple categories. Rosario's been bad at everything else this year. 46.6% hard hits is pretty appealing, but a 152 ISO, pretty disappointing, and just a 231 on base. Makes it difficult to trust him to correlate with anybody. You're just maybe picking off a home run with Rosario. Joey Meneses, 33.29, just 239, 296 on the front end of his slash line, 74 WRC plus, been pretty weak. Luis Garcia Jr., 4,200. The price has come back down with the production. 7 homers and 10 steals is great, but he's Luis Garcia. He's not anything exceptional. Nick Senzel, 34.26, down to 218, 327, 374, 102 WRC plus, 6 home runs, a mix and match part at best. Kibert Ruiz, a lot of balls in play, 12.7% strikeouts and doesn't walk, 3.4% walks. Just not hitting him as hard as he did last year. 4 home runs, sub Mendoza, 239 on base. Pretty disappointing. I was expecting a little bit more. He was out for a little while. Last year he hit 18 home runs while slashing 260, 308, 409 with all that contact. And I was kind of like, all right, this is an interesting hitter. If he can improve on the premium contact, hit a few more home runs, he gets real interesting. But just hasn't materialized so far this year. Mix and match catcher if you're playing a lot of Nationals. Jacob Young doesn't really support much more than the stolen base upside. 17 steals, 273, 327, 337, but a 92 WRC plus, not a lot of premium contact. Maybe a wraparound guy at best. I'm going to say Padres bats up top, followed by Matt Waldron, and less from the other side. A couple mix and match national stacks aren't terrible, but they're not a high priority option, and no way in hell do I roster Patrick Corbin. Last game up. Mama's got Ohtani with a home run. Yeah, Crochet's matchup was improved by losing Teoscar and the home run threat there, but it's still really, really tough at the top as you guys are going through there. I greatly prefer Schwellenbach to Canning Moba, as I think you probably picked up on as we talked this through. Opener leading into Spencer Howard, most likely going for the Giants in bulk relief role. You can see the home run upside that I referred to from the Cubbies. Not a bad option if you're hunting around for some one-off upside. Maybe not the best spot in the world for a full stack. Maybe not even the best spot for a limited stack, given that Vegas has him at just 3.85 implied runs. But maybe we could pick off a home run here from one of these guys. Kind of like the looks of Chris Morel at third base for just 32 on FanDuel, 51 on DraftKings. Highly playable option, 11.6% barrels, 43.5% hard hits. He's got 15 home runs to lead the team, 192 ISO, sub average for run creation at 99 WRC plus, but a premium power bat with upside for more, honestly. We've actually seen a bit of a diminishment in the power output so far this year. So, and we all know how hot Chris Morel can get on the right week. So kick that week off right with a good spot against Spencer Howard here. But again, it's going to be 50s and chilly in San Francisco tonight. The wind is blowing out a little bit, but it doesn't really matter in San Francisco. Other premium home run bats, Seiya Suzuki, looked like he was going to be the most popular hitter from this team. 11.78, really like the home run upside from him from the right side of the plate. 11.2% barrels, 51% hard hits so far this year, 8 homers, 7 steals, 179 ISO, good mark for run creation. Cody Bellinger with a 12.48 in the home run model. He's hit 9 this season. Diminished in terms of he's diminished by comparison to the other players on this team. He's never really had great contact, but has managed to obviously always hit, or not always, in the good years, hit his home runs. And he's basically on pace for what he did last year. Michael Busch for just 44 with second base eligibility on both sites. 2,600 on FanDuel. I like that option. 260, 355, 456, a 195 ISO, creating runs 30% better than average. 11.15 in the home run model. Again, I think we're probably more hunting for individual upside. Maybe it's short stacks, 2-3 mans on like DraftKings. A little bit more limited. Maybe you get away with a 3-man on FanDuel, but I want to respect the ballpark, the bad environment, and the Vegas total, and just kind of focus on what some of the home run potential looks like. Ian Happ for 4,300 has an 8.48 in the home run model. 3,400 on FanDuel, very differently priced across sites. This is cheap for Ian Happ. Still 12.5% barrels, 43.8% hard hits this year. The average and the on-base are down a little bit, but the on-base is still very strong. He's got 9 home runs and 7 stolen bases. His created runs 13% better than average. And again, with this kind of premium contact, definitely no slouch for power. Dansby, back to making very good premium contact. He's got 8 home runs and 5 stolen bases. Slowly, hopefully, turning the corner. Had a few good games of late. And the premium contact is something to hang on to for a shortstop that we've liked for a long time now. 3,900, 2,700. He's very, very cheap. 7.54 in the home run model. Crow Armstrong, 29, 24 across sites, and then Miguel Amaya, 24, 22 across sites if he's in the lineup. Amaya's more skippable as a second catcher. He's the only catcher in the lineup. Just more skippable in general. Crow Armstrong, 13 steals, but just a 252 on base. That's actually an impressive stolen base total over 118 plate appearances where he's only gotten on at a 252 clip. Basically, anytime he's gotten on, he's going. But he hasn't really given us a lot at the plate so far. I like those bats, but again, maybe it's more in an individual sense. Or maybe you just grab two of the power guys. I left Nico out at the top of the lineup, but 326 on base, 11 stolen bases. More of a correlated scoring guy on a night where I'm saying I don't necessarily want to look at the Giants for correlated scoring upside, or the Cubs rather. Kind of limits his appeal there. But I took my one off out of one of those Cubs home run hitters. Dimitri, hopefully the Cubs can get Steele a win because I do like the looks of Justin Steele here going up against the Giants. 19.5% strikeout rate, but some very targetable guys in that lineup. You've got Wilmer cutting that down with his 12.9. You've got Luis Matos in 94 plate appearances at just 10.6. 44 plate appearances of 11.4 out of Kirk Casale when last year he was at 24%. That one's maybe a little bit less believable. Same group of hitters, the guys who were in the show last year, amounted to a 23.6% strikeout rate. So probably some lingering strikeouts here, 2 or 3 percentage points higher. Steele has a 3.16 ERA with a 3.62 xFIP. He's pretty good at limiting premium contact, just 35.2% hard hits, less than 87.5 miles an hour of exit velo, just a 4.3% barrel rate, amounts to 2.54% home runs. 23.7% strikeout rate so far this season, despite not great strike throwing numbers. He's been able to find him a little bit of a dip in swinging strikes, about the same CSW, a little bit higher of a walk rate, had a higher strikeout rate last year, but overall pitching pretty similarly. Definitely a playable option. Giants not showing a ton of power against. They're drawing just a 3.72 or 3.73 implied total on the other side. So pretty non-threatening spot for Justin Steele. Big discount on DraftKings too. 8,500 makes him really appealing over there. 95, I think he's definitely playable on FanDuel. He ranks out third overall. So it's a very interesting Steele spot. And this is killer. As I was saying at the top of the show, if you wanted to go like this and Schwallenbach, Waldron, either one of those guys, even if you wanted to, if you're in the Canning boat, if you wanted to go there with that, not the craziest combo. Certainly can consider Justin Steele SP1. He's got a little bit lower of a ceiling than the top SP1s on the board, like Raggins, maybe Crochet on the right day, maybe Peralta. But he's right there with the rest of the board. And he's got a nice effective discount from those guys. If I'm going to Giants bats against, presumably... Oh, we got the lineup. Perfect. It is Austin Slater in the top spot, as usual against the lefty. I think he scratched the other day, if I remember correctly. But back in the lineup today, 2,624, 221, 372, 265. He's just there to get on base against the left-handed pitcher and set the table for guys like Elliot Ramos, who follow, Wilmer Flores, Jorge Soler, Matt Chapman, all their power against lefties, all those premium righty bats with a lot of excellent contact ability. Ramos, a terrific 179 plate appearances so far this year. He's got 10 home runs, 289, 363, 522, a 233 ISO, 152 WRC+. Still only cost $4,900 on DraftKings. 37 on FanDuel is probably correct at this point. Get Ramos while he's still cheap on DK. 15.7% barrels, 52.8% hard hits. Once upon a time was a premium prospect. Not that long ago. 3,500, 2,600 for Flores. Down season for Wilmer, over 217 plate appearances, but for his entire lifespan in the major leagues has been a guy that we've looked to against lefties. So if you're building with Giants, I can't really see skipping Wilmer all that often. That said, 3,500 at first base kind of does help me, the first base of it does help me get a little bit more encouraged about skipping Wilmer. I don't love him at first. First and third for 26 on FanDuel. Not ideal. But we're talking about a hitter who's having, had a very down season so far, but last year really pulled it together for a very complete 454 plate appearances. 23 home runs, 284, 355, 509, 136 WRC+ with a 225 ISO. That was probably the best extended stretch of Wilmer's career. Jorge Soler for 47, 3,000. With his power upside, he's just too cheap. He should never get that cheap. I know he hasn't been good this year. 9 home runs. Really weak slash line. 106 WRC+ is effective, though. Last year, he had 36 home runs, had a 262 ISO. Premium contact basically cut in half in terms of the barrels, but could come roaring back to life. 5.81 in the home run model shows the diminishment. Matt Chapman, under halfway to the magic number. Tyler Estrada, also less than halfway to the magic number. Both guys kind of struggling in the average department. We don't really expect much from Matt Chapman there. Expect a little bit better in terms of average and on base from Thairo Estrada. 9 home runs and just 1 stolen base, 88 WRC plus from him. Chapman right on the line for run creation, 8 home runs and an odd output of 6 stolen bases out of him. 4,800, 31 at third base is a reasonable price for Chapman, and Thairo Estrada downright cheap at second base. Luis Matos, 222, 245, 322 over 94. Kirk Casale, pretty limited over his 44 plate appearances. And then Nick Ahmed, more of a contact hitter at the bottom of the lineup. So 3 bonus squares for the Justin Steele play. Really non-threatening hitters down here. So outside of top 6, it's an entirely right-handed lineup. But outside of top 6, I'm not even concerned about the top 6, really. But that's where your threat comes from. Nice little break at the bottom of the lineup. Justin Steele, Cubs one-offs, Cubs stacks. Then Giants bats are way down there. I don't think they're all that good of a value option. Not in the hitting environment, not with the Vegas total, not with the bats that they have, and not really against this pitcher. So it's really mostly about this side. And that's it. That's your slate, top to bottom, which is good because it's, 6:08. Lost track of time. Let's run through the board one last time here for pitching. We'll pull up the home run board real quick, and then we'll say our goodbyes, and I'll get lineups updated. Steven, I'm all over that Oakland stack. We've talked about it. Mom asked, how confident am I in Waldron? Confident in the mean, right? The 32 that you can see right here. The 32, 16. I think for your money, a lot of times he's going to deliver right around that performance for you. I just don't think you get much ceiling beyond that performance, even if he goes 7 innings. There's not a ton of ceiling available there as compared to some of the other guys. But confidence-wise, I have no reason to believe that he couldn't succeed to around these levels with a little bit of potential, for more, for bonuses, whatever. So, yeah, I have enough faith in him. He's been performing throughout the season and just capable of pitching a lot of innings. Ragan's top of the board, 11,000. Happy to pay it on FanDuel, and I think it's very easy to get there on FanDuel today. 10-1 on DraftKings, same story. Freddie Peralta, 98.95. Going to be more challenged by a Texas lineup than Ragan's is by Miami. But you get a nice price discount on both sites to do it, and a premium pitcher with a 30+% strikeout rate. Happy to take the Freddie Peralta shares, and if people go away from him, so much the better. Take him at lower ownership. Let the public make that mistake. Freddie Peralta is excellent. Justin Steele, we just talked about, like the option, especially at 8,500 on DraftKings. That's a misprice. He's too low priced against that San Francisco team in San Francisco in this hitting environment tonight. Really like that. Think he works well as an SP2 with these guys. Think he works just fine as an SP1 with those guys. Garrett Crochet, a diminished Dodgers lineup on the other side. Now no Teoscar Hernandez either, so we're really dealing with that elite top 3, which could definitely damage him. But after that, I'm not going to say he can cruise, but it's a lot lighter. Not a good Dodgers lineup tonight. So I like the Crochet spot a little bit better than I did coming in, and I already liked it pretty much coming in. Tanner Houck, just very expensive, but no reason he couldn't succeed against the Blue Jays. It's just, what do we get beyond these mean projections? Do we get, maybe we get the win bonus on top. Sure, gets us to the mid-30s, the 20-ish kind of a range. Do we get into the mid-20s on DK? Do we get into the mid-40s on FanDuel? I don't know. Against a fairly low strikeout Blue Jays team, but I love the opportunity for him to succeed. I like the win upside for the Red Sox. So it seems like a pretty decent playable Tanner Houck spot. Waldron I just talked about, but again, fire away from 8,300 on either site. That said, looks a lot better to me given what I said about the potential lack of ceiling. Looks better as an SP2 option or an low-end SP1, I guess, on DK. Schwellenbach, love it. 8,000, 7,400. Value play du jour in my mind. I'm not dabbling with these guys. I'm not messing around with any of this. If I want a value pitcher, I just go right there. Premium rookie, one of their top prospects, was doing really well in high A. They moved him up to double A, did pretty well there. Now he's in the show. Skipped over triple A entirely. Good matchup against the Cards. Depleted version of the Cardinals lineup. We are seeing a little bit of power. There was 3 guys in that Cardinals lineup above the magic number for home run upside. But no Arenado, no Goldschmidt. I know they haven't been great this season, but that is still a downgrade for a middling kind of a Cardinals team. Very gettable spot for Schwelly. Bassett, 9,087, just feels like a why would you from the middle of the board against the Red Sox on a day where the Sox are pulling a big run total in Fenway Park. Seems entirely skippable. Also somewhat playable and will be low owned at those prices. You just need a lot to break your way for Bassett to really be the guy who wins the slate today. So it just kind of falls by the wayside. Canning for me is a fairly firm no. I'm targeting him more with the A's bats on the other side of that one, but he's there if you want him. 6,100. It is an aggressively cheap price on the DraftKings slate. Lance Lynn against Atlanta, another feels like a why would you kind of spot. There is a little bit of strikeout upside. Certainly, that Braves team strikes out a lot. Lynn really hasn't been that I went out and struck out 11 Braves today guy. Again, another spot where you really need things to work out. More playable is a $7,900 SP2 on DraftKings than he is at all on FanDuel. Paxton, you benefit from the White Sox. 7,700 is very cheap for a White Sox matchup. That's the best I can say about him. I really don't like him this year. 8,600 I wouldn't touch on FanDuel. 77 you could succeed given the opponent. But quite honestly, with Lubov and Eloy Jimenez both in the lineup, a lot of interesting righties, or a couple of interesting righties in that lineup. Kind of threatening for Paxton. And then a pretty clear cut line. You got the bulk relief option here for the Giants with the Cubs showing a bunch of power against. You've got a somewhat playable Molina on the DraftKings slate at 55. That would be my cut for the bargain bin. I do think that's playable as a dart throw. I wouldn't do it in one lineup, but I would do it one or two times in 150. Probably more. Michael Lorenzen, not for 85 on FanDuel. If you want it for 73 on DraftKings, you can do it a couple times, but looks pretty low end. I like that Milwaukee lineup against. This game, I think you just skip over for pitching, take bats out of that game. Highest upside total on the board. Neither of these pitchers is overly appealing. If I have to choose one, though, I'll take Carson Spires against the Pittsburgh lineup rather than falter against Cincinnati. Corbin's a huge no. Roderick and Munoz is a huge no. One last look at the home run board. Mr. Ozuna all the way at the top. Nolan Gorman, like I said, we are drawing some Cardinals with power upside. Got Gorman second overall on the board. You've got Contreras not far behind. And then you've got Alec Burleson at 10 plus. Goldie was just below the magic number, and Arenado was even further down. So again, non-tragic for them to lose those guys. I just think it would have stretched to like a five troublesome hitters for the young pitchers. So I still think he's a good value option. Ozuna and the rest of the Braves look pretty tremendous as a stack, as an option from the top of the board. 15.94 for him. You got Olsen right there. A couple other power bats from the Braves are lurking around here. There's Riley and a couple other guys down in this kind of territory. Brent Rooker right there from the A's. And again, we're targeting some A's bats. You got Langoliers there. You've got Andujar right there. JJ Bleday is on this board somewhere right there. So a lot of Oakland bats lurking either just above the magic number or kind of around the magic number. I like the Oakland bats. Ellie from the Cincinnati lineup with a number of supporting options. Looks pretty decent. Maybe a little bit deceptive in the power department given the split. He has been worse on this side of splits, but he's been getting on and creating runs, and he's been interesting. So I think if you're going to that Cincinnati lineup, you're not skipping Ellie all that often. Let the public skip him. And then Casey. Just dominant spot here. Another two guys there, another one there, another one down here. A lot of power on the board for Casey. I don't think Velasquez is in the lineup. Still a lot of power on the board for KC. Four guys above the magic number, including Vinny Pasquantino and Mike Massey, as well as Bobby Witt and Sal Perez. MJ Melendez not far behind. Hunter Renfroe not far behind that. A lot of power upside for KC. They're going to be super popular because they're the highest implied total on the board by a pretty wide margin. A lot of ways to put them together, though. A lot of ways to put them together with cheap hitting from other teams that looks pretty quality. Targets pitchers we like targeting, while also getting to premium arms on the mound. It's the name of the game, guys. With that in mind, I'm going to wish everybody good luck out there. I'm going to say somebody go win something tonight. Actually, no, we're not going to get there quite yet. I said it, but I didn't mean it. I do mean it, but we're not there yet. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. One last plug for the boys. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, get you 20% off your first month over there. Hit the like button for me if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button for you if you haven't already. Let me drop a quick invite to our Discord. Discord always rocks. A lot of good conversation going on in there about all sorts of things. If you're not in the Discord yet, check it out. Links in the chat. And now I'm going to wish you guys good luck. Somebody go win something out there tonight. We'll be back at it tomorrow. See you.